Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Enjoy the fanfic, and let's begin part 4. Naruto opened the door dressed in a kimono. He came face to face to who he had expected, the Hokage and Jiraiya. Hey Gigi. Jiraiya-san. He said with a smile, will you be joining us for dinner? The Hokage frowned. Naruto, we are here for business not pleasure. Naruto looked at the Hokage with deadly serious eyes. I know what it is you are here for. With a deadly calm voice but switched to a happy voice here, let's have some dinner before the unpleasantries. With that he ushered them into the compound. Naruto led his little party to the dining room and sat everyone down. Now then, Kurenai-chan, Yugao-chan, and Katsumi-chan have worked really hard to make this. Please enjoy. He saw the stares from the Hokage and Jiraiya about Katsumi. Oh, that's right, you guys haven't been introduced to Katsumi-chan yet, huh? Well, her story is very interesting but will be very long, so we will discuss it with the unpleasantries. Naruto sat down at the table with Kurenai, Yugao and Katsumi on his side with Jiraiya and the Hokage on the other side. Naruto clapped his hands and Kage Bunchins came in carrying the food. It was quite lavish. Plenty of food was spread out even with the shortness of the time the girls had managed to make quite the feast. Naruto and his girls made some small talk while the Hokage and Jiraiya would input a few things. Jiraiya was feeling out of place because of Naruto, he was not very courteous to him. Course he has every right to, I basically abandoned him and didn't even check on him. Jiraiya thought to himself. Though he seems to be doing all right now. He finished with a perverted chuckle about the three women surrounding him. Naruto glared at his godfather when he heard his patented perverted chuckle. Jiraiya-san, do not look at my girlfriends with such a leer, they do not take it too kindly, he said in a sweet voice. Jiraiya came back to his senses when he was on the receiving end of 3 kiss. He chuckled nervously. Gomen. He said. The rest of the dinner finished and the KBs cleared the table and went to do the dishes. Naruto stood up and said, let's go to the living room where we can commence this, as the Naruto would say, troublesome and pointless discussion. The Hokage frowned again. This was not how he was expecting this to go. They all followed Naruto and he motioned for the Hokage and Jiraiya to take a seat before sitting on a love seat. Kurenai, Yugao and Katsumi all sat on the sofa opposite the Hokage and Jiraiya. Naruto looked at the Hokage and Jiraiya expectantly. The Hokage cleared his throat before asking, Naruto, how long have you been living here? Naruto said, after we returned with Haku. The Hokage thought for a second, so about 3 weeks. How did you find this place? Naruto's eyes darkened. Yes, 3 weeks. I found this place when I would hide when I was out on the streets, Hokage-sama. He had a little bit of venom in his voice. The Sandaime blinked, surprised at the venom directed at him and that he was not called Gigi. Why did you not inform me you had found this place? Naruto's eyes became even darker. Because Gigi would be happy for me, but Hokage-sama would be forced to banish me from my own birthright. One that should never have been denied me when I was suffering. Kurenai, Yugao, and Katsumi were agitated with the waves of menace coming from Naruto. They were so in tune with him they could feel his rumbling emotions. Jiraiya and the Hokage were less affected. Sarutobi covered his eyes. Yes, I regret your childhood, Naruto-kun, but you cannot stay here. If word got out about this, he was cut off. I had no childhood, Hokage-sama, you know that as well as I do. When I was 7 I had the same maturity as a fully grown man. Do not belittle what you know. Word about me got out. Your own Anbu have yet to discover this arrangement, otherwise you would have been at my doorstep the second the report hit your table. Either you are not paying attention or your Anbu are not doing their job correctly. Naruto retorted. The Hokage was surprised, but then he thought about what Naruto said and agreed that his Anbu needed a talking to. Regardless, what if someone saw you come in here? No one is supposed to be living here. The village cannot afford another war, Naruto-kun, you know this. You must not stay here. You may claim this when you're of Junin rank. Sarutobi said with a note of finality in his voice, like that settled things. Naruto looked at the Hokage and shook his head slightly. Hokage-sama, do you really think you can keep this from me? The seals around this place alone prevent anyone who does not know about its existence hidden. Me going into the forest with Kurenai, Yugao or Katsumi would be seen as nothing more than a makeout session. Your fears are unfounded, but this village cannot afford another war, you are right about that. Not with you as Hokage. Sarutobi bristled. Jiraiya was stunned. Jiraiya admitted that his sensei was a powerful ninja, but Naruto seemed to have a point. Sarutobi said in a deadly calm voice, "What exactly are you insinuating?" "Be careful, Naruto-sama." Sensing the ki from Naruto's room, Kurenai and Yugao shivered, seeing part of the Kami no Shinobi being unleashed. Katsumi merely licked her lips at how Naruto was remaining calm. Naruto looked unfazed and responded, "You are not fit to be Hokage." "Now hold on a minute." Jiraiya started, but Naruto cut him off. "Not now. The village needs a new guiding light. Your policies are nice. You bring the people happiness, but your ninja take advantage of it. Your own Anbu have been disobeying you. The council has way too much power because you are not going to live long enough to put whatever practices you put into action through. The council undermines your authority at every turn and gives you so much paperwork you cannot even get reports from what should be the most important part of your village, your Jinchuriki." Jiraiya had his mouth hanging open while Sarutobi looked like he had been struck in the heart. Naruto looked down. "I am sorry to tell you that, Gigi, but it is true and you know it. You are the strongest ninja besides Jiraiya within these walls, but you are too old for the cage hat with the council undermining you. We need a new guiding light. This situation only proves what I am saying. You did not even know your Jinchuriki and biggest secret was living in an old Hokage's house. If someone would have been smart enough to break the security seals, they would have made off with all of Konoha's jutsu except the Hiraishin and Rasengan." Sarutobi looked down, his age catching him unawares. "I know, Naruto-kun, if the council supported me it would be a different story, but at the current time we have no one else fit to be our cage. The only people strong enough are Jiraiya here, and he must be on the move for our spies. The only other one who could be is Tsunade, but I haven't heard from her in years." Naruto looked at his Gigi and said, "Please, I know I shouldn't be living here, but it is the only place I feel safe. No one will find out about my heritage until I become Chunin and claim my clan seat. The Namikaze seat will be incorporated into my new clan. I would like to take his name, but I want to be known for my own prowess, not his. You should not hold such a grudge against Jiraiya-san. Naruto-sama, please try to make amends." Kamikaze said. Kamikaze knew his wielder had a kind heart and would be able to forgive Jiraiya if Jiraiya proved himself. Naruto looked at Jiraiya. "Do you have any idea where Tsunade-san is?" Jiraiya shook his head. "Not usually. She has escaped my spies pretty readily. She was supposedly last seen near Tanzaku-gai about 2 days ago though." Naruto nodded. "Then let's go take a look around and see if we can't find her. She needs to come back." "But why has she not?" Sarutobi and Jiraiya looked down. "She has lost much within Konoha," Sarutobi said. Naruto scowled. "And the rest of the ninja have not? Or the civilians who are friends or even lovers of ninja? We die every day and loss is a lifestyle we must bear. There is no reason to be wallowing in grief for more than 13 years. Jiraiya looked up. "She lost her younger brother first in the war and then fell in love with a young man named Dan and lost him as well. You have never lost something so precious. Do not patronize her grief." Naruto looked at his godfather with steely eyes. "You are correct, I have never lost, luckily enough. I had never had before I became a genin though. Do not compare me to her. I said she is a ninja. If she is not capable of moving on, she will waste away when others need her." Jiraiya said. "That is true, however, she will never take the job even if we found her. Her younger brother and lover both desired to be Hokage. Once she gave them her grandfather's necklace, the necklace of the first, they died shortly afterwards." Naruto's eyes softened. "A noble sacrifice for their village, but is she not dishonoring them? She is allowing the village they loved so much to be in pain when she could be preventing it." Sarutobi looked up. "Would you go with Jiraiya to find her, Naruto-kun? I know you could defeat any of the Chunin applicants and don't really need to train past keeping in shape. I would like Tsunade back. I feel something will happen during the finals with Orochimaru having attacked Sasuke." Jiraiya flinched at the question and looked with Naruto with a small amount of hope in his eyes. Naruto's eyes went steely again. "Jiraiya-san, I am not happy with you. Let me make it perfectly clear, I hold no love for you. You should have been protecting me when you had the chance, not trying to make up with me after the damage is done. I may never love you, but I can put my past behind me long enough to give you a shot at like. Do not betray my trust." To few do I give a second chance, and there is no third with me. Should you lose this, you can forget ever having a relationship with me. Naruto's eyes softened as he looked at his godfather. I had to vent when I saw you. I took my rage out when I yelled at you within the hot springs. I will try not to hold too much of a grudge, but it is hard for me to let people in Jiraiya-san. Please, I would like to get to know my only remaining link to my family. Naruto looked at the old man with some fire in his eyes. I probably sounded like I held a grudge against Konoha, did I not? Jiraiya nodded his head and said, that was what I was afraid of. Naruto nodded and said, I will never attack Konoha unless it attacks me. I will protect it, not for the village, but for the few people within it, I feel, are worth protecting. Never fear me, I will not turn against Konoha unless it turns its back on me. Sarutobi nodded his head, his small doubt vanishing after his declaration. Naruto may hold grudges, but he always kept his word. Of that nothing was questionable. Very well, Naruto-kun, as much as I want to remove you, it seems you have convinced me it is okay. Would you find Tsunade and bring her back? If anyone can, it would be you. Naruto nodded and said, we have one last thing to discuss. Since you have been so open, but this needs to remain between the six of us or Tsunade should she become Hokage. All of them present nodded and Naruto continued, the seal was broken. I have only one small piece of the seal left. Once Orochimaru blocked Kyuubi with the Gogyo Fuin, I had to rip part of the seal off to keep myself alive. I did it right before you. He pointed to the Hokage, who had a shocked look on his face, released it. I would like to tell you the rest of my story now. So Naruto explained to the Hokage how he could speak to the Kyuubi and left out how Katsumi was the Kyuubi. He explained how she acted and how she helped him. How she was a she and how she helped him, then left him alone. Why she attacked Konoha and how his father suspected foul play. Once it was all done, he looked at the shocked expressions of the Hokage and Jiraiya and chuckled, she is quite safe. She has done nothing to incur our hate and simply wishes to live outside of me. The Hokage and Jiraiya looked at each other before looking back at Naruto, and Sarutobi spoke up, how can you be sure, Naruto-kun? Naruto smiled and said, because she loves me. At that, the Hokage's and Jiraiya's faces dropped and Katsumi, Kurenai and Yugao laughed. They had been holding in since Naruto started. Besides, she has been out almost 3 days now, and she has not attacked Konoha or yourselves, why should you be scared? If she had any harmful notions, she would have killed the entire village. The Hokage and Jiraiya snapped out of it and they quickly connected the dots before looking at Katsumi. Your Kyuubi, Sarutobi said. Katsumi stopped laughing and nodded, showing her tails and ears. Yes, Hokage-san, and everything Naruto-kun has said is true. I bear no grudge against your village beyond what they did to hurt Naruto-kun when he was younger. It is considered taboo to hurt children in the demon realm, so you can imagine the horror I felt when Naruto-kun showed me his memories. The Hokage nodded. Naruto looked confused before asking, so no freaking out? No, kill the demon. The Hokage shook his head. You said it yourself, if she wished us dead she would have killed us already. Though I am curious as to why you're blonde and not a red head in your eyes. Katsumi giggled and said, that is because I am a lightning fox. I only appeared red because when a demon gets protective of their most precious things, their Yuki turns crimson. It is the reason Naruto-kun's Yuki is crimson with flecks of gold. If he ever decides to fight for the fun of it, his Yuki will be purely golden, but his reason for fighting right now is to protect, specifically protect his loved ones, so his tails are crimson with golden streaks. Jiraiya said, tails. Naruto sighed, he had hoped to save that. Yes, tails. And released them from his defense mechanism. They spilled out and his fox ears showed. Sarutobi looked stunned before both he and Jiraiya jumped back and adopted fighting stances. Where is Naruto? Jiraiya shouted. Naruto rolled his eyes. Guys, do you really think Kurenai and Yugao would be sitting so close to Katsumi and myself during dinner if I was not Naruto? Seriously, sit back down and discuss this. My defense mechanism has always been in place, hence the reason you have never seen these. I was changed into a Hanyu when Katsumi-chan was sealed inside me. Even the Byakugan could not see past this mechanism. Sarutobi and Jiraiya looked wary before asking, prove it. Naruto sighed and left the room. He walked back into it holding Kamikaze's dual blades. Proof enough? He asked. They nodded and sat back down. So how did you get your body back, Katsumi-san? Sarutobi said. Even Naruto had his eyes on her now. Now that he thought about it, he had never asked her. Katsumi chuckled and said, "That's easy. It was sealed in this compound." Everyone blinked before laughing. "That makes perfect sense," Naruto commented. "So would you like to become a kunoichi, Katsumi-san?" Sarutobi asked. Katsumi shook her head. "Not too much paperwork. I would much rather be Naruto-kun's an infox." Everyone looked at her confused until she turned into a little blonde fox with one tail. Kurenai immediately grabbed her and hugged her with stars in her eyes. She and Yugao began petting Katsumi and she started to purr. The Hokage cleared his throat before saying, "Yes, well, okay, that would work. I will get you a headband for your neck though, is that okay?" Katsumi nodded while her tail wagged happily at the attention she was receiving. Naruto said, "If that is all, I believe it is time for bed. We can leave tomorrow morning, Jiraiya-san." The Hokage and Jiraiya nodded before Naruto led them back outside. Tomorrow morning 7 a.m. Konoha's gate. With that he shut his doors and walked back inside to cuddle with his loves. The next morning Naruto was heading to the gate after giving his girls some kisses. He decided that Katsumi needed to stay with Kurenai and Yugao so they could get to know each other and Naruto could focus on Jiraiya while they traveled. He arrived at the gate to find the Hokage and Jiraiya waiting for him. The Sandaime stepped forward. "Naruto-kun, when you come back with or without Tsunade, I need to discuss something with you." Naruto nodded, already having an idea about what it was. "Jiraiya-san, you said it was Tanzaku guy, right?" Jiraiya nodded and said, "Yep, so if you're ready, let's get going. The sooner we get there the better." The Hokage said, "Very well, your mission is to find and retrieve Tsunade Senju so she can be debriefed and either retired or reinstated." Dismissed. With that, Jiraiya and Naruto set out the gates of Konoha. Time skip 2 days. Naruto had managed not to be overly mean to Jiraiya. He was not exactly nice, but he held a little bit of conversation with him. He asked about his spy network and how his life on the road was. What his specialty was as a ninja and what his elemental affinity was. Little things. Naruto stayed away from when he would visit the village to avoid his anger. He did not ask about his parents yet. "So Tsunade was your teammate, what does she look like?" Naruto asked, trying to keep conversation going while they traveled. Jiraiya took a picture out and handed it to Naruto. It showed a woman in her 20s with big, blonde hair, and a diamond on her forehead. "She is my age but uses an advanced henge to look younger. So any hobbies or something we can use to track her?" Naruto asked. Jiraiya chuckled. "Well, she is a big alcoholic and loves to gamble, though she almost always loses. Her nickname in the betting ring is the legendary sucker." Naruto chuckled at that. "Well then, it shouldn't take too much to find her Jiraiya turned to Naruto and said, "She has managed to evade me each time I got close, don't assume it will be easy." Naruto nodded and said, "Well, let's get a move on. I want to get back and look at the Haraishin a bit more before the finals." Jiraiya nodded and they stepped it up a bit. Tanzaku Gai 1 day later. Naruto and Jiraiya arrived at the entrance to Tanzaku Gai and looked around. "So we should start with the biggest casinos and then end with the bars, Jiraiya-san." Jiraiya nodded and Naruto went to move off before Jiraiya grabbed his shoulder and held out his hand. "Give me your money, I don't want you wasting your fortune in the casinos just because you can." With sincerity in his voice. Naruto raised an eyebrow and said, "You are the wealthiest person on the planet with those perverted books you sell. If you did not bring money that is on your head, you are not getting mine." "Nice try though." Naruto set off to find Tsunade. Jiraiya looked at Naruto as he walked off and muttered, "Stupid Gaki, too smart for his own good." About 2 hours later, Naruto wandered into the biggest casino in town, which seemed to be hosting a tournament. He looked around for a little bit before checking out the tournament. Once he approached the tournament table, he saw exactly who he was looking for, Tsunade. He quickly formulated a plan to get her to talk to him. "Okay, I am not a poker guy and am making this up to go along with the story, so just play along even if this isn't legal in the world." He walked up to an official that was watching from the sidelines and asked, "Hey, can anyone join this tournament?" The official looked at the youngster and said, "Aren't you a little young?" Naruto pointed to his Hitai and said, "No." The official shrugged his shoulders and said, "Yes, anyone can join as long as it is still going on, but the buy-in is 100,000 ryu." If you can afford that, you can play. But you had best hurry, there is only one spot open and the tournament ends soon. Naruto nodded. Where do I go to sign in? The official hid his surprise that the kid had that much money and said, over there at that table, pointing to a table on the far end of the room. Good luck, Naruto-sama, Kamikaze said in regards to his plan. Naruto thanked the man and proceeded over to the table. Once he had reached it, he signed in and pulled out the money to play. His money was quickly counted and he was in the last spot. He looked around the table and spotted his opponents. Tsunade was sitting directly across from him. He had hidden his Hitai so she could not see it. There were 4 other players. A man with glasses, aka glasses for now. A man with a crazy tattoo crawling up his neck to his ear, aka tattoo for now. The last guy was one wearing a crazy hat, aka hatter for now. Finally, there was another woman who had fiery red hair, aka red for now. Easy no. Naruto picked his card up and noticed it was Tattoo's turn to be dealer, so he set down half the minimum bet, 500 Ryu. Hatter set down 1000 Ryu. Everyone else called and they looked at their whole cards. Naruto had 2 8s, the 8 of clubs and hearts. The dealer discarded the top card of the deck and placed the next 3 in front of the players. There was a 8 of spades, a king of hearts and a ace of hearts. Naruto looked at the cards and looked at his opponents. These guys were good. Naruto could barely tell what they were thinking. Tattoo raised to 1500 Ryu and Hatter and Red called. Naruto raised to 2000 Ryu and everyone else called. The dealer discarded another card and set down the flop. It was a 10 of hearts. Everyone called. Until Tsunade raised to 3000 Ryu. Naruto raised an eyebrow, but Hatter and glasses folded. The rest called. The dealer discarded the last card and put down the river. It was a 9 of clubs. Everyone showed their hand to finding Tsunade had a royal flush. She won. She furrowed her eyebrows, not looking pleased at all. The next hour went on like that, Naruto winning a few, Tsunade winning a few, and her getting agitated until the end when it was only Tsunade, glasses, and Naruto. This is the last deal of the tournament. The dealer said and dealt the whole cards. Naruto had an ace of hearts and an ace of spades. Naruto set down 500 Ryu and glasses put down 1000. Tsunade raised to 1500 and Naruto and glasses called. The dealer discarded the top card and placed the 3 cards down. A king of clubs, a 3 of clubs, and a jack of hearts. Tsunade raised again to 2500 Ryu. Glasses folded and Naruto called. The dealer discarded another card and placed the next card down, which was the ace of clubs. Tsunade went all in and Naruto looked at the money and cards. He put his plan into action. How about a different bet, Tsunade-san? Naruto said. Tsunade quirked an eyebrow but said, and what would you propose? Naruto looked at his hand one more time, showing some nervousness. If you win, you keep the money and take the patent to one of my seals. Flashing the patent to his anti-rape seal. Tsunade's eyes flashed for the money that incorporated. Keep in mind, she may know he is from Konoha, but his identity has been kept a secret about being the inventor. If I win, you keep the money and go on a date with me. Tsunade immediately said. Done. The dealer discarded the last card and flipped the last card, which turned out to be the ace of diamonds. Naruto smirked. Whatcha got, Tsunade Heim? Tsunade looked at him before revealing a full house. Naruto smiled brighter. 4 of a kind. Thank you for playing, he said with a flourish. Tsunade frowned and told him to meet her at the hotel on the other side of town at 7 that night for their date. Naruto nodded and left the money for her to pick up. He had plenty more in his scroll. Naruto sent a KB to find Jiraiya while he followed Tsunade. He knew she was known to step out on her debts, so why not a date? His KB found Jiraiya drunk in a bar with prostitutes hanging all over him. His KB dispelled and Naruto scoffed at his godfather's actions. He waited on the opposite side of the street on the roof of the building until about 6:45. He was a little surprised she had not run, but he was not going to complain. He had left a KB about 30 minutes ago so he could freshen up, and now he was on his way to the lobby to grab Tsunade. He walked into the hotel and asked for her to be paged. Once she had, it took about 10 minutes, but she came down the stairs in her usual attire of a blue-green jacket with a white wraparound shirt that showed the valley of her breeks. A black sash-like belt. With black pants and sandals. I expected you to try and run away, Tsunade Heim. Naruto said as she walked into the room. Tsunade smirked. If you know this much about me, I wonder what else you know. How about we get to the restaurant before exchanging the pleasantries? Naruto nodded and led the way, purposefully leaving his back open to her so she knew she should trust him a little. He walked about 3 blocks away before entering a small restaurant with a bar. Well, I figured for a starting date a small place would be nice. Naruto said. Tsunade liked the kids' style. It allowed for their attire and they would be left in peace for the talking they were going to be doing. Not bad. They sat down and ordered their drink and food, making small talk all the while. They ate their food in peace before ordering chilled sake for a dessert. Tsunade decided to cut the crap after they had eaten. Okay, spill it, brat. Why the hell do you know so much about me and what exactly do you want from me? Naruto raised an eyebrow before reaching into a pocket slowly and pulling out his hitite. Remember this, he said. Tsunade's eyes widened before she said, I will never go back to that godforsaken village. Naruto looked at her with sad eyes. You don't even know who you're talking to, do you? Tsunade did a double take at the sadness that had not been in his eyes moments ago. Naruto, right? What's your last name? Naruto looked at her harshly before stating, think about it, Tsunade. You know who I am. Tsunade studied his face before recoiling and saying, Naruto, the Jin. She stopped herself before she broke the law. She may not have been there, but she could still have an execution waiting for her. Naruto nodded before saying, I know everything about the Kyuubi. The village needs you, Tsunade. You cannot ignore it. You are a ninja of Konoha. Tsunade's eyes spoke rage before saying, I will not go back to Konoha. If you know this much about me, you must be close to Sarutobi-sensei. He must have explained to you why I would not return. Naruto nodded sadly. Yes, but do you know what I told him? Tsunade shook her head in anger. Naruto continued in barely a whisper, that you are a ninja and as such you have 2 options, get over it, or quit. Tsunade was stunned. What the hell did this brat know of pain and suffering and loss? As ninja, our lives revolve around loss, Tsunade-san. You are dishonoring your brother and your lover by allowing the village they loved so much that they were willing to give their lives for it to crumble with the old Hokage who should have never been reinstated. You know this. You also know you are the only one who can become the Godime. Naruto responded. The Hokage is a fool's job, only an idiot would want it. She retorted. Calm down, Naruto-sama, she does not know her words. Kamikaze spoke up. Naruto's anger flared and his eyes flashed to his battle state for a second, causing Tsunade to recoil. Do not insult the Hokages. They gave their lives in defense of something they believed in and something they held precious. It is not a fool's job, it is a job of protection. A job taken to uphold the morals of the village and those past. You hold the dreams of the entire village and of those who passed in service to it. I do not love the village. I do not love the people in general, but I protect those walls because of the few people worth it. I do not care if I have to drag your back into Konoha kicking and screaming to get you either reinstated or removed from the ninja charter. You know well what will happen if you are removed from active duty. Konoha will lose one of its Sannin. A defense against possible attacks, even though you have not been there in over 13 years. You will not be able to travel anymore because of your bingo book status. You will be restricted to Fire Country and your debt will catch you. You have little choice but to come with me or I will force you. Naruto laid his money down and waited for Tsunade's response. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. This little pipsqueak thought he could take her on. Fine. One last bet then. You fight me. If I manage to knock you out, you forget you ever saw me. If you win, I will go back to Konoha with you. Naruto chuckled. She didn't know who she was messing with. Very well, let's take this outside, shall we? Naruto and Tsunade walked outside the restaurant and outside the town into the surrounding forest and found a clearing. Naruto had sent a KB to Jiraiya to tell him of the situation, and Jiraiya had told him to not fight Tsunade, that he was strong but not that strong. Naruto scoffed. She was powerful and experienced, of that Naruto had no doubt, but she was way out of practice with his current seal up to 8. If he released it, he was as fast as the Yondaime. Experience and power only work if you can hit the guy. Naruto would have a death blow ready before she could awaken from her 13-year rut. Naruto drew Sarasa and Denki and took his stance. Are you ready? He asked. Tsunade took a stance and said, come on. Naruto muttered, Kai, and disappeared. Fast. Tsunade thought then she was blown back by a punch to the gut. She stood up looking at Naruto who was bouncing on his toes. Damn, I am way out of practice for that to hurt that much. Naruto smirked. He disappeared again, but this time Tsunade managed to dodge his thrust and attempted to punch him, but he just dodged it using his natural flexibility. Tsunade's eyes widened. What the hell is this kid? He managed to dodge me. She was a taijutsu expert. Not much of a master, but her super strength was nigh unbeatable if she landed a hit. She continued trying to land hits and dodging his attacks for a full 3 minutes before he slipped and she tried to capitalize on the open guard. She thrust her hand forward and hit his head with her fist, sending him flying back. He hit the tree and went poof. What the cage bunshin? She felt cold steel press against her neck and she turned her eyes to regard Naruto with his swords crisscrossing her neck. I win, he said and waited for her nod. Tsunade nodded, ashamed she was beat by this child, and asked, "What rank are you?" Naruto looked at her. Genin. Why? Tsunade was floored. She was just schooled by a freaking genin. Naruto sheathed his swords and said, "Let's go get your stuff and Shizune-san and head to go find Jiraiya-san." Tsunade blinked. You're here with Jiraiya? Naruto nodded and said, kinda. As soon as we got here to look for you, he went off to get drunk and party with girls instead of actually looking for you. Tsunade nodded. Same old Jiraiya. I wonder how Sarutobi-sensei is. Naruto looked at her as they walked. He is fine, but he is getting too old for his job. Tsunade nodded and they got to her hotel. Once explaining things to Shizune, she was overjoyed to be heading back to the village. Time skip. Next morning. Jiraiya was following Naruto's KB, who had shown up at dawn to lead him to Naruto. The KB didn't say much beyond just to follow him. Jiraiya was still dealing with a hangover from last night. He saw 3 figures waiting by the gates and figured Naruto had acquired some traveling friends. He giggled perversely. Once he got closer, however, he noticed Tsunade and Shizune. Naruto looked at Jiraiya and said, "Thank you for nothing, you useless pervert. Spending all your money and time getting drunk and laid while I did all the work. Is this what you did when you left the village after my birth?" Jiraiya looked down and didn't comment. I thought so. Please, if we ever go on a mission again, try to stay focused. This was not a good experience with you for me, Naruto said. Tsunade raised her eyebrow as Jiraiya took the scolding. Naruto looked at the group and said, okay, well, this was much shorter than expected, but I am happy. We should arrive back in Konoha in 3 days' time. Gives me plenty of time to train for the Chunin exams. Let's get moving. They all took to the trees heading home. Time skip. 1 day. Tsunade had been thinking about it, and the more she did, the less made sense. How the hell was this guy so powerful? Sure, he had the Kyuubi in him, but that did not grant him the speed of the Yondaimes. Plus, why did Jiraiya take that scolding back there? She decided to question Jiraiya. She dropped back so Naruto wouldn't hear and spoke to Jiraiya. Jiraiya, what the hell is going on? Who is this kid and how the hell is he so powerful? Why do you let him talk to you like that? She asked. Jiraiya looked at her and said, he is a person who has been mistreated most of his life by almost the entire village. As for how he is so powerful, that sword on his back is sentient. He is a seals master rivaling me and Minato, and as for the last thing, I will tell you if you stay in Konoha long enough. Tsunade huffed and sped back up. She was going to get some answers out of her sensei. Time skip. Konoha. They arrived at Konoha on time. Few people were stupid enough to try to fight 3 people with huge reserves. They immediately made their way to the Hokage Tower and entered. Naruto walked into the Hokage's office with Tsunade, Shizune, and Jiraiya right behind him. Mission accomplished, Gigi, he said. Sarutobi smiled as he saw Tsunade. Ah, it is good to see you today, Tsunade. It has been too long. Tsunade smiled slightly and embraced her sensei. It is good to see you too. How are you? Sarutobi chuckled. As okay as one can be with doing all this work. He motioned to the 3 bunshin doing work. Gigi, you just told her the secret. Naruto mock glared at Sarutobi and Sarutobi chuckled. Tsunade was confused yet again. This kid called the Hokage old man and scolded Jiraiya. Goddamn, who the hell are you, kid? You can scold the 2 strongest people in Konoha and not bat an eye. Naruto's eyes darkened. If you wish to know, ask them. You have yet to earn my story or respect. Tsunade's eyes flashed. You will respect me. I was fighting battles before you were a thought in your father's head, and if I become Hokage, you will have no choice. Naruto's eyes went red. My respect is never given. Even the Hokage had to earn it. I call him Gigi as a sign of respect. Perhaps you will gain my respect with you in the Hokage's seat, but at this current time I would only respect the hat on your head, not you. With that he turned from a fuming Tsunade. Naruto looked at the Sandame. What did you want to talk to me about again, Gigi? The Sandame looked at Tsunade and said, could you, Shizune, and Jiraiya leave please? This is a private matter and you don't really have the clearance to know this yet. Tsunade turned around and stormed out with Shizune and Jiraiya on her heels. The Sandame put a silencing jutsu up and turned to Naruto. I have a feeling you already know what this is about. Naruto smirked. Oh, I wonder if I do, he said while turning his nose up and putting his finger on his chin. Sarutobi chuckled as he sat down. It has to do with the treaty with Kiri. You did such a wonderful job and expressed such power. They wish to solidify our alliance a little bit more than just on paper, he said, beating around the bush, not sure how he would take this. Naruto looked at the Hokage and said, so they wish a political marriage. The Sandame chuckled at Naruto's tact. Hi, he answered. Naruto thought for a moment before saying, and who would be on their side? Obviously I was chosen as the candidate, otherwise I would not know of this until the rest of the council. Sarutobi smiled. Yes, indeed you were requested and the council would have almost no problem with this as you are not from a very prominent clan yet. It is convenient a little for your wife's situation, also for the village so none of our main clans lose a bloodline. Naruto nodded, having expected this. So who is it they are asking me to marry? Gigi spit it out. The Sandame sighed before saying, Mei Terumi. Naruto blinked. So they are offering their own cage with two bloodlines to a less known just formed clan with a sense enhancing bloodline to marry a woman who has two bloodlines and is their strongest shinobi. Truthfully, he knew Mei got the council to agree, knowing some things about him that others did not, but she did not know about him being a Jinchuriki or the fact he was a Hanyu. Does she know about Kyuubi? He asked. Sarutobi nodded. When she suggested you and would not relent, I was forced to tell her. If she was an ally, I was going to tell her about it anyways. It is custom to do so. At least it is in my story as such. They know Suna has a Jinchuriki, just not who he is. Naruto cringed. So she still went along with it. Sarutobi looked at Naruto with an incredulous look and said, if anything, she insisted even more vehemently after hearing such a thing. She said it only proved you a more worthy man. Naruto sighed. Very well, I will talk with Mei-chan when she comes into town for the finals. Please let her know I wish to speak with her and send Anbu to my fake house so I know she is in town. I accept the marriage proposal as long as the alliance goes through, but I need to talk to Mei to see how far this will go on a personal level. Sarutobi nodded. Very well, thank you for your help, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded and said, no thank you, Gigi. I am sorry for hurting your feelings so much in the past few days, but this village needs to change. Sarutobi looked at his grandson in all but blood and hugged him. I know, Naruto-kun, thank you for helping this old man see the light and helping me bring this village to a new age. Naruto nodded and turned and left the room, eager to get home. Tsunade walked into the office after Naruto had left and looked at her sensei crying slightly. She was a little stunned. Sarutobi quickly wiped his tears away and said, now on to you. Tsunade cut him off. I want to see that boy's file and everything you have on him. Sarutobi frowned. You are not going to like what you see, he warned. I need to know who the hell that kid is to beat me so bad. Tsunade retorted. Very well, the Sandame said and pulled Naruto's file out and handed it to Tsunade. He started his story with the silencing jutsu up and Shizune and Jiraiya in the room. Naruto rushed home eager to see his loves and tell them of the political maneuvering Mei did. He arrived at his home and opened his doors. He ran into his compound and shouted, I am home. Katsumi found him first and threw herself into his arms and got a chaste kiss on the lips. Welcome home, Naruto-kun. Next was Yugao. Right as he let go of Katsumi, she threw herself as well and Naruto licked her lower lip until she was jelly in his hands with him holding her up. Hello, Naru-kun. Kurenai walked up to the trio and said, what, nothing for me. Naruto smirked and moved faster than she expected. She let a little eep when he grabbed her in a bridal carry and kissed her while massaging her tongue. What a welcome. I love you, Megami-chan, Murasaki Haim. How was your time finding out about Katsumi-chan? Kurenai answered while still in his arms as they walked to the living room. It was interesting. She is just like a normal girl, really. Just with a bit of a bloodlust and more of a protective streak. Naruto chuckled at the blush Katsumi had. Well, I am glad to hear you girls can get along. But we have something else we need to talk about. Seeing their raised eyebrows, he said, well, it is really talking with Katsumi-chan. I already talked about this with Megami and Haim. But I want to confirm what you girls think. They all settled into the sofa. Naruto sighed as he was around his loves again. Okay, I was just informed Kiri wanted to form a political marriage with Konoha. I am sure you can guess who was chosen for our village. They all stiffened and looked at him. Can you guess who was chosen from Kiri? Yugao spoke up hopefully. Mei-chan. Naruto nodded and all the girls giggled happily. Naruto was a little shocked. Did you girls expect this? They all nodded and Katsumi spoke up. We had discussed it when you left. We could tell Mei was planning something like that when you mentioned she was in the village during the exams. That was the only reason we could think she came personally for. We are happy we could tell she holds some sort of feelings to you. Naruto nodded and said, I want to talk to her privately about her feelings. If they are strong enough, I will tell her almost everything. She already knows about Kyuubi but not Katsumi. She doesn't know about me being a Hanyu either. So if she wishes to truly join us, then she will need to know. All of the girls nodded and Naruto said, I know it is only 5, but I am going to go take a bath and then head to bed. 3 days of traveling are taxing. All the girls nodded and got up, letting Naruto walk off. Once he did, they turned to each other and they all had the same glint in their eyes. Poor Naruto. What am I thinking? Lucky bastard. Naruto climbed tiredly into his bed. He slept in the middle of the bed and spread out so the girls could take their normal positions when they decided to join him. He looked sleepily across the room and froze. The 3 girls were standing there, their tops gone and wearing their favorite color panties. Kurenai jumped onto his chest this night and used it as a pillow as she rubbed her over his stomach. Katsumi took Kurenai's usual place on his right side. Yugao took her usual place on the left and pushed his arm into her generous bosom. Good night, Naru-kun, Naruto-kun, they chorused. Naruto chuckled and said, good night, Megami-chan, Murasaki Haim, Kuhi-sama Queen. Naruto was in his training grounds. He had been poring over the Haraishin technique his father had left him. He knew it was going to be hard to do this technique, but he was positive he could. The main problem was learning how to do the seal. It was very complex. The basics of the seal was not summoning as most would assume. It was not even a modification on the Shunshin to make it go faster. No, it would bend space and put the point on his plane right next to where he wanted to go. In this case, the kunai. It really was ingenious. To think about it easier, his father compared it to a piece of paper in his notes about the technique. If you are on one end of the paper and your enemy is at the other end, the seal bent the paper until you were standing next to your enemy. The ingenious part about it was the portal it opened for the user could not be used by anyone other than the one who made the seal because of the blood array set within it. This was all hidden by a minor seal which hid the original array with a fake one covering it. Only the user could disable it because of the blood array set within this one as well. Minato was not taking any chances that someone could possibly look at the array if he missed a kunai. Though he was meticulous in collecting his kunai after a battle according to Kushina's diary. Now where did the resistance seal come into play with all of this? Well, the Yondaime had made that up so that way Jiraiya would not bug him about the seal. Others had attempted to steal seals from him, but Minato had kept the Haraishin scroll inside a blood seal on Kushina's body, only unlockable with his blood. The resistance seal was important to toughen the body because not just anyone could do space-time jutsu, but it was not totally necessary. Following a body hardening practice, anyone could technically do the technique. Just to do it thousands of times, as Minato did to take down armies, did take quite the toll on the body. He had already completed his own Haraishin array. However, he had decided to take it a step further. He incorporated a sensor array within the seal so that he could sense chakra signatures within 10 feet of the kunai and he could determine where he should attack when he steps through the portal. He had a kunai ready for Mei if she should prove true to her intentions. He had added a warning seal on hers though. If she charged chakra into the seal, a seal would alert Naruto to her distress and he would know she needed his help. The problem he was running into was the execution. His father had left him a few blank tri-prong kunai for him to practice with and left him blueprints for making some more for himself. The tri-prong kunai were needed for the longer handle. The blades were sharper than most and cut easier. A regular kunai with a longer handle would be unbalanced, but with the added weight for the tri-prong it balanced it. He was wondering why his father had a yellow streak when he used it. He was pretty sure it had something to do with his elemental affinity, but according to Jiraiya he was wind nature not lightning, so why was the streak yellow? He decided to ask Jiraiya. As much as he disliked the idea of going to the pervert for help, he was the only one with the knowledge to help him. Jiraiya had not endeared himself to Naruto as of yet. To Naruto he did not even seem to be trying, except that one time he came over to try and train him. He had offered the toad summoning contract, but Naruto just summoned a five-tailed kitsune who simply beat the shit out of Jiraiya for leering at her. He had offered to help complete the Rasengan. Naruto had already attempted this and was sure he could finish the technique in a few days, so he declined the offer and said if he needed help he would ask. Needless to say, 2 days later Naruto had a fully powered Fuden, Rasengan usable in battle. It would take a few more seconds to form, but it had twice the cutting power of the original. He had created his first S-rank technique. Finally, he had attempted to offer his assistance on Hiraishin, but Naruto had been in the middle of making his own seal, and with that Jiraiya could not be able to help since it must be unique to each user. So, Jiraiya had done nothing else and sulked off at not being able to help his godson. The village had been ecstatic to hear of Tsunade's return. No one attributed the return to Naruto, but he did not care. He wanted the villagers to feel guilty, but he was not going to grovel for their recognition anymore. Rumors had been floating about of her becoming the Godime. Naruto hoped these were true. There was no one else really fit for the cage hat until someone in his generation took it. The years in between the Sannin and now had not been too kind to Konoha. Any of their potential cages had been ransacked by the previous war or the Kyuubi attack. Any of the few strong enough to claim the title had mental problems that took away from their candidacy. They had strong ninja, of that Naruto was sure, but their mental facilities had been damaged by the previous events. Naruto was not aiming to be Hokage. He was hoping to lead a normal Junin life. Take a few teams, train them, have kids, then probably leave Konoha once he got to be older and protect his clan from the shadows. However, if the hat was offered to him and he saw no one else fit to protect the village, he would take the mantle up to protect the village he had declared his home. His people he might not care for, but the village as a whole was his home no matter what he said. He did not want it to suffer. He held little love for it, but he did hold a sense of kinship with it as he had lived here his whole life. Naruto sighed and decided to head inside. He was expecting Mei to show up in about 4 days, considering the finals were in a week. He really hoped she held actual feelings for him. She was another girl he could not seem to get out of his head. Ever since he had met her in the Hokage's office the day after he saved Kurenai, he had her in the back of his mind. The same as Kurenai and Yugao when he finally met her. Naruto went inside and decided to ask Katsumi something after taking a shower. His team had decided not to practice together since the finals were close and Shino and he might fight each other. Kurenai was out helping Hinata and Yugao was on patrol duty for today, so it was just him and Katsumi on the grounds. He had been bouncing something around in his head ever since Mei had asked for a marriage. He finished his shower and headed to the forest where Katsumi liked to sunbath in kit form. He had enjoyed her form when she would play around. He was capable of shapeshifting too, but he was so used to his human form the fox form was a little less appealing. She was quite the little trickster in that form though. It seemed to bring her foxy qualities a little bit more to the surface. He walked into Katsumi's usual clearing to finding her with a ear in his direction, knowing he was coming. Katsumi-chan, can I ask you something? I have a feeling you know something you didn't necessarily let on about. Naruto said. Katsumi simply stretched and transformed into her human body and lay back out to sunbath a bit more with her bikini on. That had been quite the interesting time when Katsumi had transformed not wearing clothes. Naruto had almost fainted from the heavenly sight, but he managed to retain himself to make her promise to wear at least underwear when she transformed back. Katsumi flicked her hand indicating she was listening as she sunbathed. Do you know why it is that I can't seem to get Mei-chan out of my head? Even when I was younger, I would constantly find my thoughts drifting to her as they did to Kurenai and Yugao when I met them. Nothing perverted until recently, but still. I never forgot their scent or their looks even if I did not see them for months or years at a time. Naruto said. Katsumi looked at him and responded, "That's easy. It is your demonic traits. Once you met someone you considered mate material, they stayed with you. Even at such a young age, when a demon meets someone who will be a potential mate later on, your body records their actions, scent, and body language so you can find them again at a later date. You were subconsciously staking a claim on them even when you were that young. Our maturity comes fast, and yours came faster still with your lifestyle. It was a kickstart when you came across that pheromone-infested place when you were 7. Nothing came of it other than basically forcing your mind to accept Kurenai-chan and Mei-chan as potential mates before it went back dormant. That is not to say you did not develop the feelings on your own, but your body accepted them as strong and they would bear healthy children." Naruto blushed at himself for thinking that. Well, thanks for that. What would you say to going on a date when Mei-chan comes before the finals? Katsumi blinked and then launched herself at Naruto. She hugged him and looked right in his eyes. "Really?" Naruto nodded and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Really?" Katsumi snuggled into Naruto a bit more and sighed happily as they sat in the clearing. Naruto had left his compound in search of his godfather. He was pretty sure he would be around the bathhouses, but he decided to pay the old man a visit since he had not seen him since he returned. Tsunade and Jiraiya could be out on a mission. So Naruto was making his way to the Hokage Tower, ignoring the glares sent his way when he bumped into Shino and Haku. "Ohio. Shino, Haku-chan," Naruto said. Shino and Haku stopped staring at each other before looking at Naruto. "Ohio. Naruto-kun," Haku said, smiling and leaning on Shino's arm. "Ohio. Naruto," Shino said in an almost happy voice. "On a date?" Naruto asked. Haku blushed but nodded. Naruto loved teasing her, it was so easy to get a blush now. "Oh, and where might you be going?" Naruto asked. Haku blushed and said, "Shino-kun won't tell me. He says it needs to be a surprise." Naruto blinked before looking at his teammate. "Oh ho. A surprise, huh? There isn't some ring being hidden, is there?" Smirking at Shino, whose face went a little red. Haku blushed and Shino said, "Well, we mustn't be late, Haku-chan. Goodbye, Naruto." In a flustered voice. Naruto chuckled and said, "Have a good date." As he walked off, leaving a blushing couple. Naruto arrived at the Hokage Tower around 3 that afternoon. He had enjoyed his little cuddling session with Katsumi, and running into Shino and Haku put him in a really good mood. So he was humming a little song to himself as he walked into the tower. He came up to the Hokage office and asked the secretary when the Hokage would be available, and she said he was in a meeting and that he would be done shortly. The secretary had long ago come to like Naruto. She had initially disliked Naruto, but he proved himself well behaved and helped her whenever she would get rowdy people while he was waiting for the Hokage, so she had come to appreciate him some. Naruto sat and waited for the Hokage to finish his meeting. About 20 minutes passed and Naruto heard the door to the Hokage's office open and he stood up. Out walked Mei and her 2 bodyguards, Ao and Chojuro. Naruto was a little taken aback before smiling and saying, "Ohio, Mei-chan." Mei turned around from the secretary when she heard Naruto's voice, "Naruto-kun." "Ohio," she said exuberantly. Naruto chuckled at her response, hoping that was because she was glad to see him. "What are you doing here so early? The finals don't start for a week," he asked. Mei blinked before saying, "I had some other business to attend to besides the finals and decided to spend some time within my allies' village to get a feel for it and build a reputation." She had a strange glint in her eye when she said, "Other business," and Naruto placed it as wont before she hid it behind her smile. Naruto smiled at her and said, "Would this, other business, include me?" he asked with a cheeky smile. Chojuro snorted before being silenced by a death glare from Mei. "Whatever would give you that idea, Naruto-kun?" she said seductively. Naruto's smile widened at her banter as the secretary looked on with amusement at Naruto. "Oh, I don't know. Probably because I can smell you from down the road." He leaned into her ear to whisper. "I really hope that is your feelings I smell," he whispered huskily so no one else could hear. Mei shivered at his words and felt a thrill run down her spine. "Kami, I hit a gold mine. Thank you." Naruto smiled a true smile at Mei's reaction and said, "Where are you staying at?" I believe the Hokage said we had some things to discuss if we wish for things to be mutually beneficial. Naruto turned business-like. Mei turned to her Mizukage mode and replied, at the Golden Leaf Hotel on Main Street. Naruto nodded and said, could I pick you up around 7 tonight for a date, Mei-chan? Mei blushed slightly before saying, that would be fine. Naruto bowed slightly. Then have a good day, Mei-chan. I shall see you in a few hours. Mei bowed slightly as well and left the tower with her guards. She had a date to get ready for. Naruto walked into the Hokage's office to see 3 of the old man's KBs doing paperwork and the Sandame waiting for Naruto. The Sandame smiled at seeing Naruto and said, ah, Naruto-kun, what can I do for you today? Naruto smiled as well and said, well, first off, I just ran into Mei, so no need to send Anbu to tell me she is in town. I have already made plans to see her later tonight. The Sandame nodded his head and said, okay, was that it, or were you coming to see me for a reason? Naruto smirked and said, well, I need to see Jiraiya-san. He had offered to help me with that technique, and there is one part of the technique I cannot seem to figure out. Also, do you know who used to make the weapon for the technique? I need to get some of my own. The Sandame furrowed his eyebrows and said, you are only stuck on one part. That technique is quite complex, Naruto-kun, but Jiraiya is currently within the village. So you know where you could probably find him. Also, Tsunade wishes to speak with you. Apparently some things have come to her attention that she wishes to fix. As for the weapons, Higurashi used to make them, but I am sure Kurisu could accommodate you since you have blueprints of it. Naruto nodded. Okay, I will go to Kurisu and I will talk to Tsunade tomorrow if the situation allows. I am assuming Jiraiya is somewhere near the bathhouses at this point in the day. The Sandame nodded and said, have a good day today, Naruto-kun, and I hope things go well tonight. With that, Naruto left, seeing his Gigi with a smile on his face. Naruto had gone to Kurisu's shop and given him a copy of the blueprints to make the kunai. He had to explain his heritage and the reason he had the blueprints, but he trusted Kurisu, and since Kurisu was going to know Anko would be knocking down his door soon to talk to Kurenai and Yugao, he was sure it would work out well tonight to get Yugao and Kurenai with their friend again and give him the night to talk with Mei and Katsumi. He was on the way to the bathhouses to find Jiraiya. He walked into the vicinity and was merely waiting outside the springs before his enhanced hearing picked up a faint giggling sound to his right. Right outside the wall leading to the female side of the onsen. He smirked and walked over next to where he heard the sound originated from. He heard a slight scribbling and another chuckle before he reached out and smacked his godfather on top of his head. Ouch! Jiraiya said as he rubbed his newly formed lump on his head. Naruto looked at his godfather and said, I need your help with that, could you please follow me? Jiraiya blinked before standing up and motioning Naruto to proceed. Naruto led his godfather to Training Ground 43, a place very few would even venture to, much less train in. He turned around and put a silencing barrier over the clearing and began his questions. Okay, just to be safe, what do you know of the technique? Naruto asked. Jiraiya scoffed and said, I know only the makers of the seals can use it and that your father made it, so only his bloodline could wield it when he made the seal. Any others, the original seal work would not accept that person's blood. Other than that, the mechanics of the technique I don't know, but I do know how he activated it and executed it. In other words, he knows how it was executed by the Yondaime, but not what the seal array is or how the technique actually works by bending space. Naruto does not have a Kekkei Genkei, that's why I said bloodline, not Kekkei Genkei. Just to be clear. Naruto's eyes brightened. Okay, how did he activate and execute it? You can't help with really anything else in regards to the seal since you don't know it. Jiraiya looked delighted he could help his godson finally. Okay, take a seat, this won't be long, but I would like to talk to you a little bit if you would give me the chance. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Don't try to hold the information from me in return for a conversion, Jiraiya-san. That would be a bad move on your part. I can eventually figure this out, you however rely on me to recover your relationship. Jiraiya backpedaled. That's not what I was saying, Naruto. I was going to tell you the information first, but I want to talk with you without anyone else around. Naruto's eyes softened a little. Very well, Jiraiya-san. Jiraiya said. Just Jiraiya, please, Naruto. I don't really like formalities and I am more than just an acquaintance at this point, right? Naruto thought for a second and nodded. Very well, Jiraiya. You have earned at least that for wanting to talk to me without your previous information coming into play. Jiraiya nodded, happy for the drop in honorific. Okay, from what Minato told me of the technique, he would charge his kunai with some chakra, usually enough for about 10 jumps to it, and throw the kunai. Once thrown, he would wait for it to stop moving before engaging his lightning chakra. Naruto interrupted. I thought he was a wind type. Jiraiya nodded. He was, but he had a small affinity to lightning that not many knew about. He used the lightning chakra in case someone stepped over the kunai, they would receive a mild shock just enough to make them jump back, so he didn't rematerialize on top of them. The seal took the lightning chakra and made the yellow flash for the technique, thus earning him his nickname. Jiraiya ended his lecture on the technique. Naruto nodded. It made sense, but with his sensor array upgrade he could use any chakra to charge the seal. I guess that explains the chakra storage seal I couldn't figure out the reason for, he thought. He turned to Jiraiya and said, thank you. Now what would you like to talk about? Jiraiya's eyes brightened. He probably thought I would not listen to him. Naruto thought. I wanted to apologize for the mission to pick up Tsunade. I had not expected her to stay in town. She usually leaves within 3 to 5 days of being spotted, and she always knew when she was. I was honestly not thinking we would find her. Naruto rolled his eyes. Jiraiya, even if she was not there, you were not doing anything productive to the mission. Regardless of whether or not you have no reason to return speedily, I do. You should have taken this into account. Akatsuki is not going to wait around for you to find the information on them. Neither is Tsunade. If you did not act like an idiot half the time, your spies would be twice as good. Jiraiya's eyes widened. How do you know of Akatsuki? Naruto's eyes widened as well. Shit, I did not mean to mention them. Best to tell him now, Naruto-sama, so that way he can help. He may be a horrible godfather, but he is a great ninja. A powerful one at that. I can sense the sage chakra residue within his coils. The toads have taught him well, but he has not perfected it if he keeps some within him. Kamikaze said. Naruto looked at Jiraiya and sighed. What I say does not leave us. Not even the Hokage knows I know. I want him to believe that, because if he does not, or Tsunade believes I do not, then it makes it easier for me to eliminate them when they show up. Very few could defeat me, and even then those upper Echelons will not leave the villages they are entrenched at. If the Hokage knew, he would try to limit my movement, and this puts the village and everyone in it at risk. Only you or I could defeat the stronger ones, and the rest of the weaker ones would take 2 to 3 teams of Anbu to defeat. You know this. Jiraiya thought about it for a few minutes before agreeing. You are right, the few I know about would rip anyone I know apart. Even you. But if you master the technique, you will be hard to beat. Naruto responded. My speed surpasses the Yondaime's. I repeat, only the upper Echelons stand a chance against me. Only the top 2 could defeat me if I had the Hiraishin at my disposal. Jiraiya gaped at Naruto. I have not seen you move at that speed, and neither has anyone else within this village. It has not been recorded. How could you match your father at your age? Naruto smirked. Deception is a ninja's best friend. How do you think I am at that speed? Think about what I took from Gigi when I was 7. Add that to my training regime. Jiraiya thought for a moment before his eyes widened. No. You have a resistance seal on you. What level are you at? Naruto smiled. Wouldn't you like to know? Jiraiya scowled. Damn it, Gaki, this is serious. Naruto's smile disappeared. Tell you what. You help me kill some Akatsuki members and I will tell you. Specifically, the zombie brothers are going to be a pain even for the 2 of us. They have some freaky powers. Jiraiya's scowl deepened before he said, fine, I only know of them and Itachi Uchiha and Hoshigaki Kisame. Naruto frowned. Your spies need to get better. There is also Akasuna no Sasori, Deidara from Iowa, a lady that uses origami for jutsu, and someone who is said to have powers equaling a god because he managed to fight Hanzo and win single-handedly. There is also what appears to be a crazy person named Tobi, but he seems more than he appears. Jiraiya stood dumbstruck as Naruto managed to list all of the Akatsuki members when it took him 5 years to learn of the 4 he had. Well, that is some interesting group of people. Naruto nodded. Now, if that is all, I have a date in about an hour I need to get to. Jiraiya smiled pervertedly. Got to get with Kurenai-chan and Yugao-chan ne? Naruto shook his head. Not tonight, it's Katsumi-chan and Mei-chan. Jiraiya shook his head and looked at Naruto. Mei-chan? He asked. Naruto smirked. The Mizukage. Jiraiya's brain almost overloaded. Good job, Naruto, he said, holding up both thumbs while letting his nose bleed. He suddenly found himself flat on his. Don't think about my girlfriends like that again, or next time it might be a Rasengan. Naruto warned, his icy cold eyes staring down at Jiraiya. Jiraiya merely nodded as Naruto walked off. What Jiraiya could not see was the smile on Naruto's face, that he could rely on Jiraiya in helping him against Akatsuki. He wasn't really angry about Jiraiya's comments, if anything it made him proud someone was proud of him. However, he was never going to let Jiraiya know that. He was sure Jiraiya only said those things because they were true. Naruto was not a pervert, but he had to admit he had 4 of the most beautiful women on the planet who loved him. At least 3 who loved him and another he hoped did. Naruto was dressing for his date. He had let Katsumi take the main house to freshen up after Anko had come banging on the door for Kurenai and Yugao. They had decided to reintroduce themselves to the bar and left Katsumi and Naruto to their date with Mei. Naruto was in one of the adjoining houses to the main house. He had left Katsumi the room to freshen up for the date. He was wearing a kimono that was blue like his eyes, only with little lightning bolts across his kimono. He had on a necklace with a moon pendant on it, a present from Yugao. As well as his usual smoke bomb earring was replaced by a crimson wind gust earring. Look up Mysterious Abyss Keyblade from Kingdom Hearts 2 and imagine the very end of the Keyblade in earring form. They had given these to him for the 6th month anniversary, and he was wearing them to give him strength to talk to Mei tonight. He walked into the entrance hall of the main compound and said, "Katsumi-chan, are you ready?" Katsumi's "one more minute" turned into a full 10, but when Katsumi came down the stairs, Naruto thought it more than worth the wait by the position of his jaw, which was on the floor. Katsumi's dress screamed to be looked at, but only those close to her would get the real treat. It was a yellow dress with a V showing the valley of her to anyone close and tantalizing those from afar. The waist hugged her curves and led to a almost full skirt downwards, but it had slits to reveal tantalizing sneak peeks at her legs and her anklet bracelet, which had a crimson fox head on it. Katsumi giggled at Naruto's expression. She had hoped to get such a reaction out of him. He had been nothing but a gentleman since she got out the seal, but she had been worried about how she looked in front of him. It was the first time she worried about others' opinions, but his meant a lot to her. So she was excited when she got the reaction she wanted. She giggled and said, "We should get going, shouldn't we?" Naruto started to move and responded, "Hi hi." They set off to Mei's hotel to pick her up. As they were walking, Akiko came running up to Naruto with a scroll in her mouth. She handed it off to Naruto, wagging her tails happily. "Very good, Akiko-chan, thanku. Did you complete the prank I set up for you?" Naruto asked. Akiko's eyes brightened and she said, "Yes. Oh, thank you, that was one of the best pranks ever. My sis says she likes you and wants you to summon her for battle soon, okay?" With that she poofed away. Katsumi chuckled and said, "Seems you have quite the follower there. If I remember right, her sister is a Kemi, one of the top ninjutsu specialists. A very powerful ally, Naruto-kun." She cooed. Naruto blushed but said, "Okay, let's just get Mei-chan." Naruto and Katsumi walked into the living room area of Mei's royal suite. She got such accommodations for being a foreign dignitary. They admired the place for about 5 minutes before Mei walked in. Naruto's jaw was almost dislocated at this point and he just stared. She had gone with a more traditional style kimono. It was a lighter blue than his eyes, with patterns of white flowers adorning the kimono. It hugged all her curves, showing off her womanly figure even some kunoichi would kill for. Mei licked her lips, seeing Naruto's eyes roam her body. She had developed a strong attraction to the young man. She could go so far as to say she loved the man if she were questioned, but she was unsure of his feelings beyond just lust. He was not one to engage in such a relationship without cause, though, of that she was sure. She cleared her throat so they could get going. Naruto snapped out of it and said, "Well, let us go to the restaurant for a pleasurable night and perhaps a bit more." Holding out his arms for the ladies, Mei promptly grabbed his left arm as Katsumi occupied his right. They walked off to the Leaf Dragon. Naruto and his dates got through the line and maitre d' with no problems tonight. Sukune had been the bouncer again and teased Naruto a bit but let them pass. As they sat there chewing their food, Naruto told the story of how he saved the owner's life and how he helped with the down payment. He said he had a private table always and that he was always welcome. Mei made a few small comments but preferred to eat with little conversation. Katsumi was eating diligently since she already knew the story. Naruto was simply trying to lighten the mood and he succeeded when he made a joke. After a time they finished their meals and Naruto decided to get on with the main event. So girls, what do you say we go to the club tonight? Naruto asked. Mei and Katsumi blinked before Katsumi spoke the problem. Naruto-kun, I would love to go but my outfit does not fit in at a club. Mei nodded her assent to such a thing. Naruto smirked a bit, so if you could change into something more comfortable you would go. At their nods he produced 2 scrolls. One scroll for each of you contains more comfortable clothing for tonight. We added rooms here so those high-class people who wish to go somewhere more casual after this have a place to change before leaving. Mei saw a chance to tease him. So how did you get us clothes? Naruto blushed and said, if we don't hurry we will miss the open mic. And don't ask me that please. Mei pouted as Katsumi hurriedly grabbed the scroll and said, hurry up Mei-chan, when Naruto sings it is heavenly. You're in for a treat. 20 minutes later saw Naruto, now in a crimson t-shirt and black pants, Katsumi, now in a yellow shirt with a white skirt cut just above mid-thigh, and Mei, now in a blue shirt with the same white skirt as Katsumi. The skirts allowed for tantalizing views of creamy thigh skin but nothing important. The bouncer took one look at Katsumi and Mei and let the trio through the line, no questions. They sidled over to a quieter booth after grabbing their food and proceeded to make small talk waiting for their chance. After about an hour, Naruto managed to catch a lull on the mic and made a band to play. Mei-chan, would you dance with me? He asked. Mei blushed but nodded and took Naruto's hand as Katsumi pouted before Naruto made a KB for her to dance with. The KBs started the song as Naruto and Mei slow danced in the middle of the floor. I do not own this song or anything affiliated with it. I am a question to the world. Not an answer to be heard. All a moment that's held in your arms. And what do you think you'd ever say? I won't listen anyway. You don't know me. And I'll never be what you want me to be. And what do you think you'd understand? I'm a boy. No, I'm a man. You can take me and throw me away. And how can you learn what's never shown? Yeah, you stand here on your own. They don't know me 'cause I'm not here. And I want a moment to be real. Wanna touch things I don't feel. Wanna hold on and feel I belong. And how can the world want me to change? They're the ones that stay the same. They don't know me. 'Cause I'm not here. The crowd was spellbound by the emotions coming from the KB band as Naruto danced with Mei. Naruto said to Mei, this part is about you. And you see the things they never see. All you wanted, I could be. Now you know me, and I'm not afraid. And I wanna tell you who I am. Can you help me be a man? They can't break me. As long as I know who I am. And I want a moment to be real. Wanna touch things I don't feel. Wanna hold on and feel I belong. And how can the world want me to change? They're the ones that stay the same. They can't see me. But I'm still here. Naruto kept dancing with Mei as the crowd started to tear up from the display. They can't tell me who to be. 'Cause I'm not what they see. And the world is still sleepin'. While I keep on dreamin' for me. And their words are just whispers. And lies that I'll never believe. And I want a moment to be real. Wanna touch things I don't feel. Wanna hold on and feel I belong. And how can they say I never change? They're the ones that stay the same. I'm the one now. 'Cause I'm still here. I'm the one. 'Cause I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. As the song faded away, Naruto handed Mei off to a KB, telling her they would talk later and taking Katsumi into his arms. The crowd had been crying and felt sorry for the heartfelt man whose clones were singing. The next song picked up. I do not own this song either. Wise men say only fools rush in. But I can't help falling in love with you. Shall I stay? Would it be a sin? If I can't help falling in love with you. Naruto looked deep into Katsumi's eyes as the next verse was sung. Like a river flows surely to the sea. Darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Take my hand, take my whole life too. For I can't help falling in love with you. The crowd was spellbound as the clones poured love into the song. Like a river flows surely to the sea. Darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Take my hand, take my whole life too. For I can't help falling in love with you. For I can't help falling in love with you. As the song faded, Naruto, Katsumi and Mei made their way away from the club as Naruto's KBs started to play Remember the Name. Naruto led his dates to a secluded clearing and set up a silencing barrier around the clearing. The clearing had a perfect view of the moon when sitting by the lake that was viewed by the waterfall falling into it with a small creek leading away. Naruto asked the girls to sit down and they each did as Naruto turned back to them. Mei-chan, I have something I must ask you to answer honestly, do not lie. Be completely honest, this will affect our entire relationship. At Mei's nod, Naruto uttered what had to be the most horrible words he had muttered to date. Do you like me beyond a friend? Are you only using me for the alliance or do you truly have feelings for me? He hated having to ask and hated even more the hurt on her face, but he had to make sure before telling her everything. Mei was hurt that he would insinuate something like that, but after seeing the hurt in his eyes her anger abated somewhat so she could answer clearly. Yes, Naruto-kun. Do you Hunslati think I would wed a man simply for an alliance? You are kind, courageous, hold a terrible burden no one should ever have to, and still retain your ability to forgive even your worst enemies. According to your deeds and your heart there is no greater man in the elemental countries. I will marry you because I wish to, not because I was forced. Naruto sighed in relief. Then there are things you must know about me and my soon-to-be family. If you wish to end our relationship after my explanation I will not blame you. It all started one night when I was 7. 2 hours later. So we brought Tsunade back and here we are. Katsumi and Naruto stood in all their glory in front of Mei. Naruto held his breath waiting for her response. He was sure if she rejected him he would never be the same. He seemed fine with it, but in reality it would tear him up inside. He knew he wished for this woman's love just as he wished for Kurenai's and Yugao's and Katsumi's. If he did not have them then it would kill him. Katsumi watched Mei's face flicker. She knew Naruto would need her. If she rejected him it would tear Naruto badly. She had been ingrained in his demonic side at such a young age it would be hard to get over her rejection even if he did not love her. She looked as Mei opened her mouth to answer. Mei opened her mouth and said, so. Naruto blinked and released his breath. So. What do you mean so? Mei looked at Naruto incredulously. So. You're a Hanyu. So what? That does not change who you are fundamentally. You are still that same kind caring boy I met in the Hokage's office so many years ago, and you are still the young man who appeared in my office a few months ago and swept into my hearth like your namesake suggests as a maelstrom. Most importantly though, you are the man I am going to marry because he is Naruto Namikaze, the man I love. Naruto started to cry and his loves wrapped him in a hug before he finished. Thank you Mei-chan, my little demoness. He let his sobs subside and said, Mei-chan, would you like to come live in my compound for the next week to get used to your new roommates? Mei nodded happily. They shunshined to the hotel and after Mei had gotten her stuff and assured her guards she was safe they shunshined to the compound. Once they were in, Naruto nervously looked at Mei and said, Mei-chan, you may choose any room you want. He was going to finish when he was cut off. Mei asked, which one is yours? Naruto blinked but showed her to his room and watched as she walked around. It's kinda large but. I'll take it. Naruto looked on owlishly as Mei went and changed into her nightclothes with Katsumi taking off to the closet to change. Naruto changed into his and picked up a pillow and a blanket to go to another room when Mei and Katsumi walked back out. Mei immediately said, where are you going? Naruto looked at her and said, to another room, this is yours. Mei frowned and before Naruto could do anything Katsumi and Mei had him on the bed snuggling into his chest. Oh, that's what you meant, he said playing like he only now just got her ploy. Good night, Misu Tenshi, Mist Angel, Kuhi-sama, Queen. With that they fell asleep. Naruto woke the next day and left the girls to get acquainted by themselves. Kurenai and Yugao had joined them in bed when they had shown up later that night. Kurenai had taken his legs while Yugao had snuggled onto his stomach. Amazing how girls could contort to make a comfortable sleeping position on the one they wanted to be close to. He had an appointment to keep with Tsunade. He remembered that the Sandame had said she wanted to talk to him and he wanted to know if she was going to be Hokage. So he figured he would see what she wanted. If it was some medical thing he was not too keen on allowing Tsunade to check him over. He knew she was skilled and whatnot, but he had gotten through 13 years without needing medical treatment, and anything his body could not heal naturally would mean almost instant death at this point. However, These points were at the back of Naruto's mind as he thought, I just don't like hospitals and I don't trust doctors, they did more harm than good when I was younger. Indeed, when Naruto was younger, the doctors would sometimes set his bones wrong, whether on purpose or accident. Naruto could never find out, or dress his wounds sloppily, and the only reason they would be changed was because of the Sandaime. He had learned this from his medical records, which he had stolen when he was younger to test the medical facility defenses. Ever since then, he had been wary of doctors and being touched by them in any sense of the term. Naruto arrived at the hospital, which he had been told was taken over by Tsunade when she returned. So Naruto walked into the lobby and could already notice a difference. There was no doctors milling about as there had when he was younger. The nurses were all busy and it looked like it was being run 10 times more efficient. Naruto chuckled and walked up to the information desk. Where is Tsunade-san's office? He asked. The receptionist looked up before scowling. What do you want here? She asked with a sneer. Naruto sighed and turned on his blank mask. I am here to see Tsunade-san. She has requested my presence. You don't want her hearing. The reason I was not there was because you were unhelpful, right? He said in a monotone voice. The receptionist backpedaled and said, no, of course not. Tsunade-sama's office is in the office wing, top floor. Just follow this hallway and take a left at the end. It will bring you to the elevator and take the top floor. After all, Tsunade's rage was legendary for someone who pissed her off. Naruto grinned and said, thank you. Then turned and walked down aforementioned hallway. He mused slightly while he walked and rode the elevator, enjoying the soothing music from the elevator. He heard the telltale ding as he reached his floor and stepped out of the elevator. He looked around and noticed that Shizune was sitting at the receptionist desk up here, blocking the way to a door which had Tsunade Senju on the nameplate. Naruto turned to Shizune and said, good morning Shizune-san, how have you been? Shizune looked up and said, ah, Naruto-san. I've been good. It's nice to be able to sit down and not worry about debt collectors and actually lead a life. Thank you for bringing Tsunade-sama back. This hospital was a mess. She declared. Naruto smiled slightly and said, so, is she in? I heard she wanted to talk to me and I have a question about her. Shizune BL nicked before she said, 1 minute, Tsunade-sama is not a morning person. Naruto chuckled, okay, let me know when it is safe, and sat down in one of the waiting chairs. A few minutes and some shouts out of the office later, Shizune came out and told Naruto Tsunade was ready to see him. Naruto made his way into the office. Once he did, he could smell the sake. He held his nose as he walked in and stood in front of Tsunade, who was wearing her usual clothes and sitting behind a big desk with a few stacks of paperwork on it. The office was lightly furnished like the Hokage office. It had a small sofa and a coffee table along with a few chairs in front of the desk. Naruto took a chair in front of the desk, still holding back his sense of smell. You wanted to see me, Tsunade-san? Naruto asked. Tsunade looked at Naruto and began remembering what she had read about him. His life had been horrible. Bad doctors. Bad caretakers. Bad teachers. Bad everything. No one had cared for this person slightly, and when Jiraiya told her he was his godfather, he punched him so hard he couldn't breathe right for the next week. Her sensei had tried, but he had been bogged down with paperwork. She felt pity for the boy who was sitting in front of her. Yes, she sees him as a boy. Naruto saw her eyes fill with pity. He scowled. Don't pity me. I do not want nor need anyone's pity. I have gone 13 years without it and I do not need it now. If anything, pity the poor fools within this village that will die because of their ignorance. Pity the ninja that die on a regular basis keeping this city safe. I do not need pity and am not someone who should be pitied. I am happy with my lot in life. Tsunade blinked and hid her pity. That was one hell of a speech. He was more mature than she thought. Okay, well. She fished some papers out. Naruto waited patiently while Tsunade looked for something on her desk. He was pretty sure what this was about now. It was not going to end well for Tsunade and his relationship, but he would let her ask and he would explain his reasoning. If she tried to force the issue, he could easily leave. Tsunade finally found what she was looking for and pulled it out with an aha. She set it down and opened it up. It was Naruto's medical file. So I see you were here repeatedly when you were younger, but you have not returned or seen a physician since you were 7 years old. His sense tests were not considered going to the hospital. Naruto sighed. Hi. He said. Exactly what I thought. Tsunade looked at Naruto and closed his file. Well, we need an up-to-date file about all of our ninjas, so I am going to need you to get a physical and some tests done on your blood. Naruto frowned. Anything else? And what tests exactly? Tsunade did not like that Naruto was questioning this in this manner. No, nothing else. And the blood test is to see what we need to give you should you need a blood transfusion and to check your vitamins and the overall health of your body. Naruto said. Who would be doing these tests and the physical? Tsunade blinked and said, a chosen doctor who holds nothing against you. Naruto scowled. I know you requested all the information on me and you have my medical file right there. What exactly would make you think I would consent to these tests even if you would be doing the procedure yourself, much less some random doctor who, supposedly, holds no grudge against me? Naruto was fuming at this point. We're all the Sannin morons. Seriously, it did not take common sense to know he would not like doctors touching him, period. Tsunade frowned. Regardless, you must have these done, Naruto. I suppose I or Shizune could do it, but you would have to wait quite a while. We are busy cleaning up the hospital for when I take office. Naruto smirked. So I was right, you gonna announce yourself at the Chunin exams? Tsunade nodded and said, don't change the subject. Naruto's smirk vanished and he looked at Tsunade. I do not like doctors. I do not like being touched by random people. I have survived 6 years without a physical. My body will heal anything not completely fatal. There is almost no reason for this, but if you can gain my trust, I will consent to these tests. I have a severe phobia of doctors from my early years, as you can guess from my file. Tsunade frowned again. Naruto, this is needed. She tried to reason. Naruto shook his head. I have been a genin almost 7 months now, and not once have I reported for an injury like a cut or anything leading up to a broken bone. My body heals faster than any of your medical jutsu. I can survive a little longer without the physical. With that, he turned away and said, you can take this up with Gigi, but he supported me while you were not here in regards to this request, so I doubt he will change his mind, but by all means give it a try. Naruto walked out of the office. Time skip day of the finals. All of the people were packed into the stadium. They were eager for the fight between Gaara and the last Uchiha. The other fights just seemed like a formality to lead to that fight. Every daimyo and their retainers had come. The stadium was packed to the brim with people. The Konoha 12 that had not made it into the finals were all sitting in the same spot with their Junin sensei next to them. The clans all had their own special seating areas. The cage box had 3 seats open. One was for the cage. Leader of Sunagaku, and his chair was all the way on the right side. The Hokage's chair sat in the middle. Finally, the Mizukage's chair was on the left side of the Hokage's. This signified their alliance with each other. Shikamaru, Gaara, Kankuro, Bozu, Tamari, Shino, and Neji were all standing in front of the original instructor. The sickly Hayate. Hayate looked at THTE genin that were slouching and showing little pride. He spoke up. You guys are the main attraction, show some dignity. A few of the genin straightened up, but some just ignored him. He sighed. The Hokage was sitting in his chair. He was relaxing. Today was the final day of his reign for the rest of his life. He was happy. The cage walked up and said, greetings Hokage-san. There will be some interesting matches, will there not? The Hokage chuckled as he shook the man's hand to hide his surprise of the difference in his handshake. Yes, it will be. There are 2 surprises planned for the audience here today though. Before the cage could comment, Mei arrived and shook the Hokage's hand. Ah, Mizukage-sama, how good of you to join us. How was the royal suite I gave you while you stayed for the week? The Sandame questioned. Mei giggled and said, oh, you know I did not even spend one night there, Hokage-sama. I cannot wait for these exams to begin. It is going to be extraordinary. The Hokage blinked and grinned. Yes, well, let us get the show on the road then. Hayate got the signal to begin and looked at the genin. He noticed 2 were missing. He held out the sheet with the matchups. Check your matches, make sure you know who you are fighting against, he said through his coughs. Neji looked around. Seems Uzumaki-san has realized he is fated to lose. Shikamaru turned to Neji and said, you have no idea who you are trying to screw with, Hyuga-san. Neji was taken aback by Shikamaru's turn of demeanor. I would rather give up cloud watching in Konoha before even thinking of battling Naruto. Just as he said this, a vicious wind picked up within the stadium. It grew and grew until even those within the stands were covering their eyes to keep it from drying them out. Only Hiyashi said, "Unbelievable," as he saw the chakra within the wind. The wind suddenly died down and all of the competitors looked at where there was a small dust cloud rising from the ground and the person now standing in it. He had on a haori with a kyuubi being whipped around and seemingly protected by the wind. The kyuubi was forefronted by two swords which crossed in a X pattern. Within the X pattern there were 4 kanji, one for Megami in the top V, one for Murasaki in the left V, one for Tenshi in the right V, and the last one was for Akuma, demon, in the bottom V. He had on a crimson undershirt with black Anbu-style pants and his sneaker-looking shoes. He had his headband tied around his shoulder with the Namikaze crest on the other shoulder. His golden hair and blue eyes standing out for all to see. "Ya miss me?" Naruto asked cheekily. Neji was glaring at him while Shikamaru just sighed muttering, "Troublesome." Naruto noticed Sasuke had yet to appear for the finals and formed a plan within his head. He was not going to allow what was going to happen to pass if he could help it. The Uchiha's ego had been stoked enough. Gaara looked at Naruto with murder in his eyes. He couldn't understand why Mother was so afraid of him. Though he felt a kinship with the boy that never meant anything to him before and certainly wouldn't now. He wanted to fight Naruto and he wanted to know whose existence was stronger. Bozu had heard that this guy was supposedly the Mizukage's fiancé, so he already had plans to forfeit if he matched up against him. No matter what, brains over wanting to prove himself. If he was strong enough to catch the Mizukage's eyes, he wanted nothing to do with him as an enemy. Kankuro and Tamari had one thought: who the is this dude that scares even the Aikibi? Shino was smirking behind his coat. That's it, Naruto, show them the real you. The you hidden away. The you that will change this world and make it a more peaceful place. Shino honestly believed as much as Naruto said he wasn't out to change the world, he would. It was just the way Naruto was. He was a catalyst for things that shouldn't be able to happen. Him falling in love with Haku seemed to revolve around Naruto even though he wasn't there. Naruto was the one making it possible. Hayate looked at Naruto and said, "You were almost disqualified." Naruto smirked. "Perfect. Does that mean if Uchiha-san does not show up soon he is disqualified as well? After all, a late ninja is against the ninja rules." Hayate looked at Naruto before signaling the question to the Hokage. "Cage box." The Hokage noticed the question, as did the cage. Mei was a little in the dark as she had not been briefed on certain hand signals from Konoha just yet. The cage frowned at the question presented by Uzumaki. The Hokage, however, smiled at Naruto's ingenious way of questioning it before the matches started. He poses a good question: should Uchiha Sasuke show up late? Should he still be allowed to fight? The Hokage explained for Mei. The cage said, "I believe he should. Most of the daimyos are here to see the last Uchiha and my son fight." Mei frowned. A ninja who is late on the field of battle is a useless ninja. If he cannot even show up on time, he cannot be considered Chunin material, thus making the fight here meaningless. She had been through a war and did not take kindly to ninja who disregarded their duties. Time being her main problem with ninja, if they were late they were, as she said, useless. The Hokage smiled. Mizukage-sama is correct. If he does not show up on time, he is not worthy of the rank of Chunin. The cage tried again, but what of the daimyos that only came here to see his fight? At least push his match to the last slot. Mei spoke up again. No. If it were anyone else he would not be shown extra treatment. This is ridiculous. No ninja is above their superiors' orders and his orders are to be on time. To be late would be inviting an insubordination charge. The Hokage sighed. He will forfeit if he is late. However, should Gaara be up for it, I will allow Uchiha Sasuke to fight in an exhibition match after the finals are over. That is the final say. Sarutobi signaled this to Hayate and sat back so he could make his announcement in a few minutes. Hayate received the signals and relayed the information to the genin standing in front of him. The daimyos had not been happy, but the exhibition match would be worth it. Naruto smirked, his main problem accomplished. The rest of the genin seemed apathetic and Gaara still had that crazy death look in his eye. Before we begin, the Hokage has a few announcements to make. Hayate said and turned their attention to the cage box. Sarutobi received the signal for ready to start and activated a jutsu so he could be heard all over the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, today is the finals of the Chunin exams. We hope that every fight will be honorable and fair. But first I have a few announcements for Konoha and the world. The first is something that has been whispered about for the past few weeks. As everyone knows, Tsunade Senju has returned to the village of Konoha. Multiple mutterings filled the stadium until Sarutobi raised his hand for silence. She is a model medic. She has revolutionized the medicine world. She is an accomplished ninja capable of holding her own in battle and being named one of the Sannin. After this his voice turned old, showing his age. I am old. I am tired of this mantle of Hokage. I have served you faithfully for most of my life and wish to bask in the light of the rest of my life. As such, today we have a new Hokage. I give you, Tsunade Senju, the Godime Hokage of Konoha. As he said this, Tsunade walked up to Sarutobi with her own robes flapping in the wind and was bestowed the Hokage hat. The crowd burst into cheers and started to chant, Tsunade. The Kage looked around nervously for a few seconds before retaining his composure and clapping. Mei looked at Tsunade and smiled, welcoming another female Kage. Tsunade turned to the crowd and raised her hands for silence. I will protect and serve Konoha until my rule is over with. I will right the wrongs of this village and make it stronger than before and stronger than my ancestors have. This I swear on my title as Godime Hokage. The crowd burst into cheers again and the battles had to wait a full 5 minutes before they stopped. Sarutobi stepped forward again. That was my first announcement, now for my second. Before the end of my reign I forged another alliance to keep this village I love safe. You may not have heard this, but Kurigakure has ended its bloody war and become united under a young female who is wise beyond her years and a suitable Kage in her own right. When she came into my office years ago asking for assistance, I had to turn her down because of our state, but when she went to leave, someone from Konoha stopped her and set her at ease about why I had denied her. When she sent for emissaries from Konoha for the Chunin exams, I was surprised, but I sent a team, and when they got there, the same person from Konoha managed to secure a treaty with them. So it is with great pleasure I announce the formation of the alliance between Kurigakure and Konohagakure. Again the crowd burst into cheers for their old Kage and their new allies. The shinobi had been hearing of this for months, but civilians had no idea about it. Sarutobi again raised his hands and said, my final announcement will not be met with such applause. He said this so sadly that the village instantly quieted. My final announcement as Hokage is to inform you I kept a terrible secret. Many of you know that Minato Namikaze gave his life to defeat the Kyuubi, leaving no heirs and no one to carry on his noble line within this village. I happily inform you that we were wrong. There was one person left of the Namikaze bloodline. Murmurings began in the crowd of who it was, while 7 sets of eyes stared into Naruto's shocked expression. The daimyos were in shock except the Fire Lord. He was keeping a calm head. Naruto had contacted him the week he had learned of his heritage. According to his mom's diary, the Fire Lord had liked Minato but had not known he was expecting a son. So Naruto had contacted the man and sent him a small amount of his blood to confirm his identity to gain immunity from banishment techniques by the council, though that seemed remote at that point. Naruto had wanted the Fire Lord informed of his true potential to Konoha so he had a backer should things within the village fall through. The Fire Lord had immediately responded upon confirmation of his bloodline and said to expect his support, and he would not talk to the Hokage of this since Sarutobi had known but hidden it from him. The Kage finally spoke. Who is the final descendant? Sarutobi smiled sadly. The very person you have beaten, and ignored all your lives. The very person who protects you with all his power even though you don't deserve it. That man is standing in front of all of you, yet you refuse to see it. Look at the battleground in front of you and tell me who Minato's son is. The Sandaime said with his god of shinobi voice flaring back to life. The crowd looked to the ground and a few seconds passed before the crowd gasped, noticing the symbol emblazoned on Naruto's shoulder. Sarutobi spoke up before a cry of outrage could ruin it. That is right. Naruto Namikaze has been in front of you the whole time. Flaunting it, but no one ever took notice. Do not question this. It has been confirmed by Tsunade and myself through blood work. He is of the Namikaze line and has inherited all that Minato left for his son. Cheer for him in these exams. Know that he will protect you to the best of his abilities despite your horrible history. With that, Sarutobi disappeared into the crowd to sit next to his grandson, leaving a shocked crowd. Tsunade spoke up. Let the Chunin exam finals begin. Hayate looked at the crowd and then at Naruto and chuckled. You sure know how to surprise people, don't you, kid? Naruto smirked. That was all, Gigi. I didn't plan to reveal myself yet. Ah well, can't be helped. Shall we get started before the crowd cheers or boos? I don't want to be run off or have to wait another 20 minutes. Hayate chuckled before sending the other genin into the waiting area. Once the field was clear, he stepped in between the genin and looked at both of them. The rules are the same as the prelims. Stop if I call it or your opponent surrenders. Both genin gave nods and Hayate brought his hand down, Hajime, and jumped back from the sure to be explosive battle. The crowd seemed to have recovered from their shock and cheered for their respective fighters. Surprisingly, Naruto had a decent fanbase. Neji smirked and said, "You are still fated to lose, Namikaze-san." Naruto looked at Neji and scowled. "And you still have a stick up your. I told you you would wish that Hinata had used the caged bird seal on you within your fight. Luckily for you, she requested me not to. Instead, I will show you why you should stop being so full of yourself." Naruto removed his swords and his cloak, leaving him in his shirt and his Anbu pants and sneakers. He set them his swords to lean on the wall and folded his haori nicely as a yellow fox poked its head out of one of the haori's pockets. Katsumi looked at Naruto and Naruto nodded, showing her to take care of his swords and haori. He turned back to Neji, who was fuming he was being ignored. "You cannot defy fate. I am fated to win," he said. Naruto looked at Neji and said, "If you are fated to win, then why am I still standing? Shouldn't I be on the ground passed out because you should have won, right?" Neji started to grind his teeth. Oh, so the great Hyuga, who has the all-seeing Byakugan, cannot see what is right in front of him. Well, let me spell it out for you. You make your own fate. With that, Naruto took a open stance, showing many openings. Neji lunged forward, intent on stopping this fight right now. He ran forward at impressive speeds for a genin and thrust his fingers with the gentle fist style towards Naruto's heart. Naruto saw Neji and dodged, sidestepping the attack. They separated. Naruto took the same stance and looked at Neji as Neji glared at him. Neji lunged forward and attempted to hit him again. Naruto dodged this one by taking a step back. Each time Neji would strike, Naruto would somehow dodge the attack. With each dodge, Neji grew increasingly frustrated. Naruto finally pushed Neji away and spoke. "This is your first lesson. Do not lose your cool. For the Hyuga, should you lose your calm within battle, it spells disaster for you. Your strikes need to be precise, and anger only clouds your precision." Neji took a deep breath and said, "You cannot defeat me. I am fated to win." Naruto frowned again. "Then let's continue." He took the hummingbird stance. The crowd, who recognized it, gasped. Neji activated his Byakugan. Naruto looked at him. "You rely too much on your eyes. Should someone take away your sight, you are defenseless against even the weakest of ninja. No better than a common thug." Neji lunged forward again to hit Naruto, but Naruto weaved around his strike and struck a point on Neji's arm, deadening his fingers. Neji danced back, holding his arm closer to him. Naruto spoke. "Get some distance between you and the Hyuga is defenseless." Naruto took some kunai out and made some cage bunshin that surrounded Neji and started to throw them at him. He managed to dodge most of them until they all threw them at him at the same time. "Hakusho Kaden. 8 trigrams palms heavenly spin," Neji shouted and started spinning. Naruto blinked as his cage bunshin were destroyed. Naruto looked at Neji as the Kaden wound down. "Very good, Neji-san. I know that is a main branch only technique, but you must have created it on your own. I commend your work. But it is not enough. If I have distance, I can run you out of chakra. This is enough though." Naruto took a couple of kunai out and flung them at Neji, who jumped out of the way. Naruto appeared next to him, Rasengan in hand. Rasengan. He shoved the ball of chakra into Neji's stomach and sent him careening into the wall. Neji's Byakugan deactivated. Neji looked up at Naruto from the rubble he had left. Chakra burns and scratches on his stomach, which had been shown by his torn shirt, showed the Rasengan had been underpowered. Naruto looked down at Neji. "You say that Hinata is weak. You say she should not be a ninja. Open your eyes, Neji Hyuga. Your father died saving his family. The caged bird seal should not be in use, but he gained his freedom just as you will. You dishonor him by trying to destroy what he died to protect." Neji snarled and said, "What do you know? You don't know what it's like to have your fate determined by a seal. You can't possibly understand the hatred I feel for the main branch. But I will tell you of the Hyuga's heritage of hatred. So Neji explained about his father and how he had died. Oh Neji, I know much better than you think you do. Your father got what he wanted, do not belittle that. Naruto said. Neji stood up and took a stance. His Byakugan flared to life. You are within my divination. Hake Rokujuyan Sho, 8 trigrams palms 64 palms. Naruto sighed and Neji moved forward, striking each of Naruto's chakra points. 2 palms. 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms. 32 palms. 64 palms. Neji's Byakugan deactivated, showing how drained he was. Naruto fell to the ground and coughed up a bit of blood. Neji smirked, believing he won. Proctor, call the match. He cannot use his chakra and he cannot fight any longer. Neji said. The proctor merely looked at him and coughed. Naruto chuckled. My, you should take my title as most surprising ninja of Konoha, Neji-san. 2 main branch techniques that you learned by yourself. Amazing, I must say. But it still is not enough. Naruto stood and looked at Neji as he wiped his blood off his chin. Neji was shaking in rage. But how? He asked. I know I hit your points. He shouted. Naruto merely looked him in the eye and said, indeed you did. But you could not close them because I overflowed them with chakra. Neji simply glared at Naruto and took up the gentle fist stance again. Naruto looked at him incredulously. You don't have the chakra to even activate the Byakugan, yet you still wish to fight after seeing how much chakra I have. Foolish Neji. You claim to be tied up in fate when you try the hardest to escape your own. Naruto disappeared from Neji's sight and moved in behind Neji and went to strike his neck with a chop. Neji saw the attack coming and tried to avoid it, but he couldn't move fast enough. The last thing Neji saw before blacking out was Naruto's face staring down at him. The whole crowd was silent as the council of elders for the Hyugas seethed at their defeat. Hiashi was smirking. I told you all this years ago, yet you said we didn't need to change. After a short silence, 2 voices sprung out. Yeah, go Naruto. It was none other than Kotetsu and Izumi, 2 Chunin who used to love Naruto's pranks. With that cheer the dam broke and the whole stadium cheered for Naruto as he went and picked up his swords and Haori and walked back up to the waiting area. Cage box. Mei smirked seeing Naruto's total defeat of Neji. That's my fiancé. Tsunade smiled seeing Naruto get cheered like that, warmed her heart, though it was tempered by the feeling of hypocrisy it inspired by those that knew of Naruto's past. Orochimaru grimaced. That brat is getting too powerful. He somehow managed to remove the curse seal I placed on him. If Jiraiya shows up, I will have to call off the invasion. I can take Tsunade, but if I allow Sarutobi-sensei and that fool to run amok, they will destroy my entire forces. A fine fight. Definitely showing the qualities of a Chunin. Mei said. Tsunade nodded. Yes, definitely. He is almost Chunin material just from this one battle. He analyzed his opponent and played to his weakness. Impressive. Orochimaru nodded as well. Definitely Chunin material. Hayate signaled for the next match. Gaara-san shunshined down to the arena and stood there with his maniacal gleam in his eyes as his mother called for the Uchiha's blood. Hayate said, Uchiha Sasuke. You have 30 seconds to report before you are disqualified and lose on account of forfeit. The crowd waited in anticipation, expecting Sasuke to make an appearance as grand as Naruto's, but they were disappointed after a 30-second warning. Hayate spoke. Uchiha Sasuke has not shown and forfeits. Will the next match please come down? Gaara-san shunshined back to the waiting area, eager for his next fight as Shukaku calmed down, being near Naruto. Shit, I can't reveal my techniques before the finals. Kankuro thought. I forfeit. He shouted to the proctor as Shino prepared to shunshin. Hayate blinked but said, okay, will the next fighters please come to the arena? By now the crowd had grown restless after seeing the fight between Neji and Naruto. They wanted something to watch, not forfeits. Temari jumped down and rode on her fan, gliding into the arena. Shikamaru was muttering, troublesome women and having to fight them, before Naruto walked over to him. Shikamaru, just get out there, man, before the crowd throws a riot. Naruto said. Shikamaru just muttered and jumped down to the ground as the crowd cheered. The crowd had expected flashy jutsu and cool techniques like the Rasengan, not the mind games Temari and Shikamaru played. Temari had started off seeming the victor until Shikamaru started to maneuver her into position for his technique. When he finally got her stuck and caught by his technique, he said simply, I forfeit. I have only enough chakra to hold this for another 5 seconds before I lose control and she wins. So I forfeit. The crowd facefaulted but cheered the brilliant minds of the two young genin. Cage box. Temari is a smart girl but Shikamaru is a hidden genius. I am surprised at the outcome but the match was well fought and both deserving of the promotion. Mei commented. Orochimaru scoffed. Nara-san is worthy of it but my Temari-san lost. As if that settled things. Tsunade narrowed her eyes and said, they both fought admirably and Temari won technically, as she would have killed Shikamaru in the real world. Both deserve the promotion. Hayate coughed and said, will the next fighters please come down? Bozu walked down as Temari stayed where she was. Bozu got across from Temari and looked at her. Hayate got in between the two and said, Hajime. Bozu immediately rushed Temari trying to get in close for his sword fighting but Temari wouldn't have it. Fuden. Datapa, great breakthrough, she said while swinging her fan blowing Bozu back. Bozu kept trying to get in close but Temari would stop him with her wind just you until Bozu resheathed his sword and took out 3 kunai. He threw them at Temari who blew them off course with her wind. Once she did she almost ignored them until she saw a glint in her vision realizing the danger she turned back and managed to use a Kamedachi no Jutsu, sickle weasel technique, to cut the wires with her wind blades. Once she was done she landed and prepared for the next assault. Bozu looked at his ruined wires and yelled out, I forfeit. Temari's sweat dropped. What the hell is it with people forfeiting? Bozu looked at her. I have no chance of beating you. I would need to get close and you have already thwarted all of my efforts. I would have moved to favorable terrain in the actual world but I can't here so I have no choice but to forfeit. Hayate called the match. Smart kid you got there Mizukage-sama. Tsunade said. Temari showed her wits again and her power. That battle fan is deadly. Bozu has the intelligence and the right mindset but he needs to get a bit more well-rounded to be solid Chunin. Mei nodded and said, I agree on all counts Hokage-sama. Orochimaru merely stated, neither are fit. Hayate looked up at the stands and said, will the next fighters please come to the arena? Gaara and Naruto smirked as they made their way down to the floor. Naruto handed his Haori to Katsumi and whispered, go sit with Kurenai-chan and Yugao-chan. I don't want to showcase you can fight just yet. Katsumi pouted at him in her fox form until he kissed her snout and she ran off to find Kurenai and Yugao. Naruto chuckled at her sudden departure before he focused on his new fight. Naruto stood across from Gaara, who had a maniacal gleam in his eye as he watched Naruto approach and take his spot. He could feel the power rolling off of Naruto in waves. He was suppressing it but it was still impressive. Finally someone who can prove my existence. He said to himself. Hayate moved in between the two and raised his arm looking at the two before he brought his arm down. Hodge. He got out before someone shunshined onto the field and got glared at by Naruto, Gaara, and Hayate. Kakashi raised his hand in greeting, yo. We aren't late are we? Sasuke took in the positions and smirked as well as, Haned. Hayate glared at the copy ninja and said, yes you are and your pupil is disqualified by forfeit now get off the field you're interrupting a match. Cage box. Tsunade ground her teeth seeing Kakashi and Sasuke arguing with the proctor on whether or not Sasuke was disqualified. Mei frowned. This is the famous copy ninja. Is he always late? Tsunade grimaced. Apparently so, something I intend to change starting now. Tsunade shunshined onto the field. Kakashi and Sasuke were getting on Naruto and Gaara's nerves. They had been poised to attack now they were ready to kill the two for arguing over something that was decided hours ago. Just as Naruto was about to nod to Gaara to get them to attack the duo, Tsunade shunshined onto the field. Hatake Kakashi you are hereby demoted in pay for being late to your own student's important exam. Uchiha Sasuke you are disqualified for being late and have forfeited now get out of my sight. Tsunade glared her cage hat very noticeable at this point. Kakashi stuttered, but Hokage-sama. Sasuke cut him off, you can't disqualify me. The council will have your head if you do this. I am the last Uchiha. Tsunade glared at Sasuke making him quiver. The council will do nothing to me. I am Hokage. I rule. Not the council. They will advise as they always have but they make no decisions. You are late and as such are disqualified just like everyone else. Now your team is subject to D-rank missions only until I deem you ready for higher missions. Get off the field now. Kakashi quickly grabbed Sasuke and shunshined away. Naruto smirked. Nice job Hokage-sama. Tsunade turned to Naruto and grief passed through her eyes for a second before she smirked and shunshined back to the cage box. Cage box. Damn, I have to call off the invasion. Orochimaru thought. Once Tsunade had shunshined down to the floor, Jiraiya had appeared at the left side of her chair, standing slightly back, acting as her guard. He stayed there when she shunshined back up. Orochimaru made a discreet hand sign calling off the invasion but left it so the summons would be released once he prepared to leave. Hayate took his position and said, "Let's try this again." Hajime. He leapt away and Naruto looked at Gaara as they stared each other down. Is mother still scared of me? He asked. Gaara scowled. Well, scowled more, and responded, "Yes, and I wish to know why. You will prove my existence." With that, Gaara raised his hand and sand shot forward straight towards Naruto. Naruto dodged by going to his left and flipping. He muttered, "Kai," and his seal counter dropped to 5. He disappeared in a burst of speed and hit Gaara from the back. Gaara stumbled forward a few steps before he regained his balance and raised his other hand, swirling his sand around him to keep Naruto from breaking through. Naruto sped around the sand, breaking open parts of the armor but not really landing hits and managing to dodge Gaara's sand attacks. Gaara sent a wave of sand to capture him, but he flipped over it and threw a punch at Gaara's face that was blocked by his sand armor. Naruto danced back and waited for the next attack. The sand came again a little faster this time, but Naruto sidestepped it and ran forward, throwing a punch at Gaara's solar plexus. Naruto decided taijutsu was not going to cut it, so he stepped back again. Naruto saw the wave of sand coming at him and spoke, "Fuden. Rasen Fuboru, spiraling wind ball." He breathed some wind chakra into his hand and it formed into a ball that shot forward and burrowed through the sand and straight at Gaara. It hit Gaara and Gaara flew back and hit the wall. Naruto landed and took a breath. Gaara stood up, Shukaku's Yuki swirling, and said, "Yes. Pain. It hurts. It hurts. You will prove my existence." He swirled his sand around him in a protective cocoon and had an eye outside the cocoon. Naruto's eyes widened as he took in what Gaara was going to do. He thought quickly and grabbed Denki. He quickly rushed forward and slashed the sand. Electricity flashed from Denki, but did little more. "Naruto-sama, you must put more chakra into it. That sand is chakra infused, it will take more to make it turn into glass," Kamikaze said. Naruto quickly doubled his output and electricity crackled along Denki's blade. He slashed again and jumped back as spikes appeared to stop him, but this time it works. The sand around the cut turned to glass and fell to the floor while Gaara screamed out in pain from the electricity that hit him. Once Naruto had regained his bearings, he was about to jump forward when Kamikaze spoke, "Naruto-sama, watch out," he said. Naruto barely managed to get away from Gaara's claw. His left hand had transformed into Shukaku's and he had a tail made of sand with one eye showing a golden diamond with black where white usually is. Gaara smirked at him. "You are worthy of proving my existence. Come, don't run away," he said. Naruto merely dodged his next wild slash and sliced part of Shukaku's hand off, which turned some more sand into glass. Gaara growled and continued trying to hit Naruto, but Naruto kept dodging until Gaara started to do hand signs. Tsunade leaned forward and looked at the cage. "What is he doing?" Orochimaru's eyes widened before he made a discreet hand sign. "I don't know." Mei's eyes narrowed. Naruto rushed, trying to get to him in time before Gaara shouted, "Tanuki Niri no Jutsu, feigning sleep technique," and slumped forward as a massive tanuki shape was made from sand. Naruto cursed before telling Katsumi in their mental link, "You, Kurenai-chan, and Yugao-chan go protect the daimyo box. Don't let them move, I will stop him." "Roger," Katsumi replied. Naruto jumped up onto the wall, hearing Shukaku yell, "I'm free." Naruto looked up at Shukaku and yelled, "Oi Tanuki." Shukaku looked around until he saw Naruto. Shukaku had blocked Naruto from sight from everyone who was in the stands. The stands were utter chaos as the Anbu tried to get some order. At the same time, two three-headed snake summons plowed into the city walls. Cage box. Mei and Tsunade were about to jump into the fray until Kurenai informed them Naruto had it handled and that they should secure the crowd before they cause a panic. The female cages looked over to where the cage was and only saw some robes. Orochimaru chuckled as he left Konoha with some presents. "Kukukik. Sasuke-kun will come to me. Naruto looked up at Shukaku, who was looking nervous at this point. Naruto simply glared at him until Shukaku said, "Alright, what do you want?" Naruto smirked. "Leave the guy alone. He has suffered enough, hasn't he? Allow him to live a normal life and give him some help." Shukaku snorted and said, "You want me to help my container? Are you stupid? I would rather die." Naruto smirked evilly. "That can be arranged. You know who I held and you know how powerful I am." Naruto released his defense mechanism and showed his Hanyu side and spiked his chakra. Shukaku started to tremble from the height Naruto's chakra went. His eyes shifted nervously. Naruto reeled in his chakra and tails and reverted to his human guise and said, "Do all of that and I will make sure you are freed upon his death. His natural death. Allow him access to your powers and keep him safe as best you can, and I will break the seal or keep you from being sealed the next time it happens." Shukaku looked down and thought for a moment. He was immortal, so a few decades was nothing for the promise of freedom. "Deal now, deal with the insane one I created and I will hold up my end of the bargain." Shukaku receded into the seal and Naruto slapped a demonic suppression seal on Gaara's head as he fell. At one of the breaches, Jiraiya stood ready to take on whichever summon stood in his way. The three-headed snake burst through the walls and Jiraiya summoned Gamahiro. "Ready, Gamahiro," Jiraiya said. "Let's do it, Jiraiya," Gamahiro said and leapt forward, cutting the snake in two with his swords. Jiraiya smirked. "HMPH, too easy." A Naruto clone stood at the other breach. Once he heard the poof of a summon, he started his summons as well. Naruto summoned Akemi. "Hello, Akemi-chan," he said as he took in her Hanyu form. She could rival Katsumi with her foxy looks, though her were a size smaller. Akemi looked at Naruto and said, "Ah, you must be Naruto-kun. My sister told me what you had heard. Very nice. What is it you need me for?" Just then the three-headed snake burst through the wall. Akemi's sweat dropped. "Ah, snakes. Such horrible, disgusting things. What should we do, Naruto-kun?" Naruto smirked. "Akemi-chan, do you have any fire? Like really hot fire?" Akemi nodded and said, "Of course." Naruto nodded and explained his plan. "Up for some burnt snake?" Akemi nodded and said, "Kitsune bai." Sending flames racing at the snakes. Naruto took a deep breath and expelled it. "Fuden. Kami Oroshi, godly wind from the mountain." He thrust his arms forward. The wind caught the flames and set it to blue, and the flames raced towards the snake, burning it to a crisp as it flailed about, destroying a bit more wall but otherwise leaving the village unharmed. Akemi wagged her tails and said, "That was fun. Hope you summon me again, Naruto-kun." She blew him a kiss and poofed back to the summon world. Naruto's clone poofed away. Mei and Tsunade had the crowd calmed down since Shukaku had gone away and most of the people were looking at Naruto as Kurenai, Yugao, and Katsumi left the daimyo box after making sure everyone was okay and the Fire Lord was protected. They received many thanks for protecting them, but they just replied they were doing their job. Katsumi turned into a woman when she went to Kurenai and Yugao. Naruto looked down at Gaara as he was trying to stand with the suppression seal still on him. Naruto got his clone's memories and smirked. Akemi was just like her sister. Naruto sighed and took a step towards Gaara. Gaara stared at Naruto fearfully. "No. Stay away. I will prove my existence. I love only myself." Naruto merely strode forward and looked at Gaara and said, "And that is why you are weak. To love only yourself and life only for yourself is weakness." Gaara stared confusedly at Naruto before muttering, "Why? Why care about others? They will only hurt you. They don't care about you." Naruto looked at Gaara with sadness. "Yes, they do. Your sister and brother care for you greatly, you just won't let them. I am strong because I fight for my precious peoples. I am strong because I fight not for myself but for others." "What will you fight for, Gaara-san? What will you fight for, brother?" he asked. Gaara's eyes widened as Shukaku filled in why he had called him brother and why Gaara had called him brother before. He was another Jinchuriki. Gaara looked at Naruto before nodding. "Indeed, brother. What will I fight for? I forfeit," he said to the proctor. Hayate coughed and said, "Shosha, Naruto namikaze." The crowd went wild as Naruto beat a Jinchuriki. Cage box. HMPH, I knew he couldn't beat Naruto-kun. Mei said, finally dropping the Mizukage act since only Tsunade was there. Tsunade smiled. "Indeed, this puts him at Junin level. All he will need is some field experience." Mei snorted. Gaara was carted off to the infirmary, sound asleep as Hayate called down Shino and Tamari. Hayate looked between the contestants and said, "Hajime." The fight was uneventful. Shino was fresh and had not been fighting, whereas Tamari had fought 2 battles in a row and then barely had time to rover as she was getting ready for the invasion. Tamari managed to hold him off for a little while using wind jutsu until she ran out of chakra and was promptly sucked dry of the rest of it. "We will have a short interlude before the final match," Hayate said. Naruto shunshine to Kurisu's shop to pick up his materials for his fight. After having collected the materials, he walked into the arena with a minute to spare before his match started. Hayate stepped in between the 2 contestants and looked at them. "Ready?" Naruto nodded and Hayate looked at Shino. Shino said, "I forfeit." Naruto facefaulted, and when he looked into Shino's humorous expression he smirked himself. Hayate said, "Huh." Shino sighed and explained, "It is simple. Know your limitations. I know Naruto could beat me with half his seals off. As such, I will not fight him in a pointless battle where we may end up hurting each other and only proving what the judges already know." Hayate shrugged his shoulders. The boy had a point and said, "Shosha and Chunin final champion, Naruto Namikaze." The crowd went nuts cheering for Naruto. 20 minutes later, Mei, Tsunade, and Sarutobi were in the cage boxes and presented the Chunin promotions for their own villages while recommending those who were worth it. Shino and Shikamaru were granted Chunin promotions and Tamari was granted a high recommendation. "The Fire Lord would like to make the final announcement," Tsunade said, and the crowd murmured about what it could be. The Fire Lord walked out onto the battleground and not the cage box and asked Sarutobi and Naruto to join him. Once they did, the Fire Lord spoke. "Naruto-san contacted me about 2 months ago when he first learned of his heritage. He sent me a small amount of blood so I could test and make sure that what I was telling him was the truth and that I could get to the bottom of this. I was good friends with Minato and was hurt when I found out he had a son I had not known about. I asked Sarutobi-san if there was any Namikaze bloodline carriers still alive and was told no. Imagine my surprise when I get the test results back and it says that my friend did indeed have a son. It seemed Sarutobi-san lied to me. I could understand lying to the village, but I was privy to such intimate information. So I decided to learn about the son of my dear friend only to find his life is worse than even the worst criminals. I almost withdrew my support from this village, but Naruto stayed my hand, saying that to hurt the village would be to hurt myself and my lands, which he is right. But Konoha know this from now on. Should you attack Naruto, you attack me. His family is my family and his hurts are my hurts." He put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. "Naruto-san, I will always support you. Know that if you ever need anything, let me know, and if it is within my power, I will grant it. But I do have one question for you though," the Fire Lord said, watching as Naruto wiped his eyes. "Hi," Naruto asked. "Why the Kyuubi on your cloak?" Indeed, mumblings began being heard before Naruto chuckled. "Why not, sir? It is a symbol of destruction for its enemies, but its friends are the safest within the world. That is what I am. Protector of my friends and worst nightmare of my enemies," Naruto answered. The Fire Lord chuckled and went to leave before Naruto asked him to stay and that he had something he had to do. The Fire Lord looked at him confused until he saw 4 tiny fox kits running away from them. The Fire Lord chuckled before dismissing the Sandame. "Well, let me meet your wives. I wish to see which beauties caught your eye," he said to Naruto so only he could hear. Naruto smirked. "Oh, they caught more than that, my lord. They caught my heart from the moment they accepted me." The Fire Lord smiled as he heard 4 gasps in the crowd and 4 shunshins into the battleground. Naruto turned around to study his loves and loved what he saw. He had summoned 4 little kits to fetch the girls while he asked the Fire Lord to be there because he had supported him so far. Kurenai and Katsumi had little red 2-tailed foxes while Yugao and Mei had yellow 2-tailed foxes. They all looked at him quizzically until the fox in Kurenai's hands poofed back the summon world. Naruto's heart was racing, but he got down on one knee and pulled out a beautiful golden ring with a ruby set in the ring. The ruby was the darkest red he could find. He said, "Megami-chan Yuahi Kurenai are the sun during my day. My world would be dark without you. Would you do me the honor of marrying me?" Naruto said and looked into her eyes. Kurenai nodded happily and let him put the ring on her finger, then kissed him chastely, letting the tears fall down her face. Naruto turned to Yugao as her fox poofed back to their world. Murasaki Haimazuki Yugao, you are the moon to my night sky. Without it I would be lost in the darkness that consumed me. Would you honor me by agreeing to be my bride? Her ring was white gold with a amethyst set within it. The gem was as big as Kurenai's a royal color. Yugao croaked out, "Hi," as tears streamed down her face. He slipped the ring on and chastely kissed her too. Naruto turned to Mei and her fox poofed away. He took out the third box and opened it. The band was gold with a sapphire inlaid in it. The gem was as big as the others, but it caught the light beautifully. Misu Tenshi Mei Terumi. You are the flame within me. Without you I would not have the strength to carry on. Would you honor me by marrying me? He asked while on one knee. Mei nodded and smiled happily at Naruto as he slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her on the lips. Finally, he turned to Katsumi, who was trying to hold her composure but losing it at the thought of Naruto proposing to her. Naruto went down on one knee again and pulled out her ring. It was a beautiful canary diamond. Yellow and caught the light as well as a white diamond would. It was inlaid in white gold like Yugao's was, and he said, Kuhi-sama. Katsumi. You are the stars of my night sky. Without you I would know not where to go. Would you honor me by becoming my mate? Katsumi was crying freely and nodded happily, saying, "Hi," over and over again as he slid the ring on and kissed her. Naruto turned to the Fire Lord and said, I give you the matrons of the Namikaze household. He said with the most glorious smile anyone had ever seen him give. The Fire Lord chuckled at Naruto and said, I wish you a happy life and know that his protection now extends to all of you fine young ladies. All of the ladies were in tears at this point and they all nodded and said, Hi. Naruto turned to his fiancées and said, Let's go home. They all gathered together and walked out the stadium amidst applause.